We are live.
All right, thank you very much. I'd like to welcome everybody to the Township of Georgian Bay Council meeting for Tuesday, February 9th, 2021. And I'd like to commence this meeting at 9 a.m., call it to order. And as usual, I'd like to start with a land acknowledgement that we are on the lands traditionally occupied by Indigenous peoples. They continue to care for this land. They continue to shape the Township of Georgian Bay today. And we want to show our respect. And we want to share with them our management of the lands around us and save them for many generations to come. Hundreds of years after the first treaties were signed, they remain relevant today in guiding our decisions and our actions. Like which? Council, does anyone have any declarations of pecuniary interest that they'd like to make at this time? I'm seeing none. So then I will move on. We have a presentation this morning from the Georgian Bay General Hospital. And I see Ms. Hunt and Ms. Krafchek. And do I see anybody else from the hospital? All right. I'd say the screen is yours. Take it away.
Thank you. Well, thank you for having us today. We are here. I had reached out to Karen because we heard wonderful news that you folks were supporting us this year with a donation again. So thank you for that. So Gail and I wanted to take the opportunity to give our thanks and just give you a quick overview of where the money is going and allow you to ask any questions. So thank you from all of us at the hospital and the foundation on behalf of the patients and everyone in the area in North Simcoe, including Township of Georgian Bay. Gail, I'll let you take it away and just give an overview of some of the things that the donation's going to for this year.
Sure, thank you. And thanks to everybody today for having us here. And open to any questions you want to ask as well. So please, when I'm finished, if you have any questions about the hospital, what's happening right now, happy to answer those. So it's been a busy year, as I'm sure you've heard and you watch the news and things like that. So in addition to our usual spends for equipment that needs to be replaced, like our telemetry packs and those sort of ongoing everyday equipment, we also had to purchase a lot of unexpected equipment for COVID that wasn't a priority. Thus far, the ministry has provided funding for those unexpected purchases, which really allowed us to expand our patient care areas and reduce the movement of equipment between patient rooms to stop the spread, reduce the chances of spread of COVID. So it was very scary at the beginning of the year because we were in a position that we had to purchase a lot of additional IV monitors and pharmacy dispensing equipment and things like this and additional beds. And we were very nervous that if there was no assurance from the government about replacing those capital funds, that the things that were prioritized, like the telemetry packs and our microdebrider for our surgery and things like that, that we wouldn't have the money left over to replace those equipment that had met their end of life. And the telemetry equipment is really important. It allows us to monitor patients, their heart rates and vitals, and allows them to monitor in the ICU and allows centralized monitoring when they're out on the floor as well. So a shortage, it was always a shortage of those, and sometimes we can't move patients out of the emergency department if we don't have the telemetry equipment available to hook up to them. So the equipment was definitely breaking down. So we were very nervous about the fact that we wouldn't be able to buy those things. So I'm happy to tell you that the government did cover those unexpected purchases for COVID equipment. So we were able to purchase the necessary items that we had planned for the year that needed to be replaced. And those are the types of things that we were able to use your generous donation towards. So I want to thank you for that. It's healthcare equipment, as I always say, is extremely expensive. They're assuring, companies are assuring that use in dangerous medical situations. So they have a higher level of quality into those equipment. So it is very costly. And we have to sort of really work hard to decide every year what are those priority purchases are going to be. So it is, we have over well over $7 billion worth of equipment to replace on an ongoing basis. So knowing that we have the support of our communities that we serve is very important to us. So thank you very much. And I'm happy to answer any questions you might have about equipment purchases or about our COVID response in general that you may have. I'll open it up before I hand back to Nicole if you have any questions. Yeah.
Thank you. Councillor Jarvis has his hand up.
Yeah, just curious to know how you guys are planning ahead with regards to the effect of COVID on people moving from large urban centers to places I would think such as Midland, Penetang, and our area. Is there going to be, is there any work being done at looking at expanding the size and capabilities of the hospital there in Midland?
Yes, thank you for that question. So there was, as part of the when you've seen sort of the ramp up and ramp down of our surgical department, a lot of that has to do with the amount of patients that we've had in. So it was a requirement for all the hospitals in Ontario who have ICUs to increase their capacity. So we were provided with additional vents and additional beds to be able to, in the situations that occurs that we have more population than we normally do in our hospital, that we would increase those ICU bed capacity from our normal capacity of 6 to 8 to going up to 13 beds if necessary. As far as acute care capacity, what we did is we worked as a region. So we worked on the pandemic response unit located at RBH in Barrie. And there's 20 beds, additional beds outside of the hospital in Collingwood as well. We work together as a region to plan that, and we're working together still about how we move patients around the region. And one of the reasons we did that was because health human resources are in very short supply right now. So if we each added additional beds, we'd just be competing over the same staff and stealing from each other. So we decided to centralize our efforts as much as possible so that we could, not be trying to work with minimal staff at each location. And it is very difficult to run a site off-site. We're all in sort of lean leadership times and lean staffing. So it does, if we can do that on a centralized basis, for us, we found it's worked really well. And we have a regional team from all the input from all the hospitals in this area that work together about how we use those beds and how we move the patients around for each other. So far, we have very collaborative collegial relationships, and we haven't had to have orders from the IMS table, the incident command table, about how to move patients. We've done so voluntarily. So it's worked really well in this region.
And if I can just also add to that, I think for the future, the hospital is also, Gail, planning on master program planning to look at the future demand on the hospital. And so they are engaging in that right now, which then, of course, allows the foundation to support their initiatives as to the growth of the hospital. And then we can engage in feasibility study and that sort of thing for campaign planning if need be. So we are working hand in hand with the hospital for the future as well.
Yes, thank you for that, Nicole. I think one of the reminders about that is that it's actually the projections now for 20 and 25 years out show a doubling of the beds that we have now. And that was before COVID and a lot of the movement patterns in the population. So we'll have to see what sort of longer term effect, if any, if there's a permanent move of people to this area.
Just from a demographic standpoint, then, are you aiming to expand to allow for a greater capacity with an aging and retiring population that's moving north, or a younger population, or a bit of both? I know because I have an uncle who is in Collingwood and had to go to RVH for his kidney his dialysis because there wasn't capacity at Collingwood. So yeah, how are you guys handling that type of thing?
So there is, so that part of the study we do have completed. So it's really projecting out the demographics, and the projections show for our area that it's much higher than the provincial for an older population. So we are building our programs around that. There is, speaking of dialysis, that's one of the capacity planning areas, and there's a large increase expected for dialysis to deal with those capacity issues. Acknowledging as well, there's a higher Indigenous population in this area as well, and there's often, we need to meet that demand as well from that population. So those are all aspects of it. The seasonal aspect represents an issue because the government doesn't have a sort of an approved formula for, I think, all the hospitals that live in high areas of seasonal residents deal with this issue because they're not really, people are counted about where their permanent address is and not necessarily captured in the seasonal population. So it remains a difficulty to deal with that for the hospitals, and in this, definitely in this region, we all experience that. So we haven't, and that's something that there's advocacy around, because a lot of medium-sized hospitals are in areas where there's seasonal residents, and we aren't, those aren't captured in our service area per se. So it still remains a difficulty.
All right, thank you. Councillor Cooper.
Thank you. I don't know which one of you wants to answer this, but it's my understanding that a few weeks ago there was a COVID outbreak at your hospital. And as I understand it, and maybe this is inaccurate, but anyway, the story I got was that it was as a result of a patient, I guess, from the Midland area that had been in RVH and transferred up to your hospital, and subsequently COVID was spread. And so I'm curious as to what you're doing today to sort of mitigate another situation like that. If you wouldn't mind answering that, I'd appreciate it. Thank you.
Sure. So some of the, I think you'll have noticed that there's a lot of outbreaks occurring in hospitals now as we have a higher incidence in this area. So yeah, our outbreak happened, started in the beginning of December and to the about mid-January. One of the changes now that's in place that just actually came in place the first week of our outbreak was from public health, was that previously patients who had received a negative COVID swab, weren't required to be masked all the time during interactions, and that's changed now because the incubation period for swabbing is so long, as well as somebody could be positive and not have enough of the virus in their system to actually show. So in the case when we started, we had a patient who swabbed negative twice at the sending hospital and receiving hospital, but ended up actually being positive. And so they were not in our hot zone, as we call it. We have an area of the hospital where we place COVID suspect or positive patients. And we haven't ever had any transmission there, but there's a much higher level of protocols in place. And so really those protocols have spread now to the rest of the hospital. We assume that everybody's positive, whether they swab negative or positive. It's our interactions with them. We do the best we can as far as to, not all cases can patients be masked, obviously, but we do the best we can. And one of the other changes that we've done, and a lot of facilities have had to do this now, is that what really spreads it amongst the staff is, the break rooms and lunch rooms, because obviously they have to unmask to be able to eat or drink. And it's really reducing the amount of staff that are allowed in an area at the same time. Much like you do at home, you have a familiarity with the people that you live with. And so, you're less cautious around them. When people are together every single day of the week, they may, their level of vigilance sometimes drops. And what we've done is, try to ensure that and constantly reminding and monitoring and reducing the number of people allowed in break rooms and lunch rooms and things like that as much as possible. It wasn't as much an issue in the summertime because a lot of staff actually just went outside for their breaks or lunches. But in this season, I think that's why you've seen a big rise in hospitals in our area and congregate environments, because people can't leave the building. And quite frankly, in a building such as ours, where there's over 300 people working here on a given day, you don't really have enough space for everybody to be spaced out. So we've had to repurpose some of our meeting rooms and boardrooms and things like that, and turn them into spaced out break and lunch rooms so that staff could have a place to demask and eat or drink safely during their break without having to come in a certain distance with somebody else. But I do have to say that once it's in, it's very difficult to get out because the incubation period is so long. It's really dropped staff morale because the changes they put in place immediately, you won't see the outcome of those changes until 14 to or more days later after you sort of run through that incubation period. So there is not an instant reward for changing your behaviors. You have to still wait for that next round to go through. So it was definitely an experience for us. And I think one of the positive outcomes is that we were able to sort of share our experiences with the other hospitals that have experienced outbreaks now and share those learnings that we've had so that they could, in our area, sort of implement those things right away and curtail it from spreading as much.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Good, thank you. All right, back to Ms. Krafchuk.
Yeah, so thank you again for having us here today. And I love the engagement with the questions. We're always happy to answer that. And Gail is such an expert from the hospital side, so I'm thankful for that. Again, you as a group have been very supportive of us with this additional donation, even working with the Hoobers for the equipment donation in the past. And then, you know, Mayor Coetzee, you've been very helpful when it comes to gift announcements and working with us in some proposals and such. So thank you to all of you as a collective group. We're very happy for this partnership and appreciative of everything that you're doing to support the communities in which we serve. So on behalf of all of us, again, thank you so much for having us here today. And we'll leave it at that unless anyone else has any other questions.
Your Worship, we do have a check available if you'd like to make a virtual presentation to the hospital.
Oh, I'm empty-handed.
Put your hand up. Here we go.
Oh, okay.
Amazing.
Oh, too bad you can't just slide it from one picture to another to another.
We do it on TV.
Yeah.
And is someone going to grab a picture? So what we'll do is we'll release this like we've done with Tiny and the other communities. We release this with the media release with the picture of all of us on the slide, if you guys are good with that.
You guys get the picture?
Yeah. Who's taking it?
My colleague, Trish.
Okay.
Oh, and Karen too, I think, has got a photo. Karen, did you get one?
I missed it, but if Trish got it, it's all good.
Okay, let's do it again just in case.
You like this too much.
I always like a photo.
Oh my goodness.
She's not in because she's.
Yeah, see, it kind of blocks your picture.
Okay.
It looks like that Kilgore was here.
Yeah, or Wilson, the neighbor.
Well, thank you for having us today.
Thank you so much.
Well, thank you. Appreciate it.
Have
Bye-bye.
a great day, everybody.
Okay, council. Next on our agenda. Moved by Councillor Wienko, seconded by Councillor Jarvis. Be it resolved, the council adopts the consent agenda of February 9, 2021 as circulated. Any comments or questions? All those in favor? And that is carried. Thank you. Moved by Councillor Hazelton, seconded by Councillor Douglas. Oh, sorry, I have to skip these. I apologize. Get those set aside. Moved by Councillor Douglas, seconded by Councillor Cooper. Be it resolved that council adopts the regular agenda of February 9, 2021 as amended to include 10G, updates to planning policies. Any other changes that anyone would like to see to the regular agenda? Councillor Wienko, you're muted.
That topic, was that going to be in closed session or open session?
At this point, they've suggested it for open session.
It is open session.
And I think a number of councilors suggested it should be in closed session.
So yesterday during closed, there was a fulsome discussion. And if council wants to have recommendations in this regard for staff, then this needs to be an open session.
I think we should go into closed session first and then maybe next month have an open session, because if it's in closed session today, I have really nothing to say.
You mean if it's an open session today, you have nothing to say?
Okay.
Correct. Yeah, if it's an open, I'd rather not be too explicit today, but if it's in closed session, I'd be more frank than Paul.
Ms. Gumby, do you want to jump in before I go to Ms. Douglas, followed by Mr. Cooper?
No, I was just going to say, just because it's about planning policies, which is a public process, and if councillors have concerns about specific aspects of the zoning bylaw or any documentation, that is open session conversation.
Is your concern, Councillor Rienko, more about individuals as opposed to policy?
B.
So I think if this is about individuals, then it should be enclosed.
Well, what do other councillors think?
I'm seeing a lot of nodded heads.
So I'll let other councillors talk.
Then list it as 12B.
Okay, so why
And
don't we,
can't be called updates to planning policies then.
all right, so why don't we modify this? Instead of 10G, we'll make it 12B, which is 12 is closed.
Yes.
And I don't know, should I just call it planning staff issues or something to that effect? Or planning consultant issues?
We don't have a planning consultant, so there shouldn't be any issues.
Oh, details. Planning personnel, how's that? Okay.
Sure.
Or advice.
Okay. I've modified the resolution to read, be it resolved, the council adopts the regular agenda of February 9th, 2021 as amended to include 12B planning personnel, and that's in a closed session discussion. All those in favor? All right. Now, Ms. Douglas, you had your hand raised earlier. Oh, it's been taken care of in effect? Okay, thank you. Sorry about that. All right. So now the next item on our agenda, as I flip the page, would be communications for mayor and council. Let's start with, let's go alphabetical order this time. So we'll start with Councillor Bocek.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council. Ever since COVID-19 has become rampant, we've pretty much all just stayed at home and done what we were told by the province. So no in-person meetings for me this month. Many phone call conversations to do with local businesses and ongoing concerns that I've spoke about every month for the past 6 months. So nothing new to report.
All right, thank you. Councillor Cooper, you're next in the alphabet.
You're pretty good at that, Mayor. Thank you.
Well, I'll probably mess up before we get through everybody.
Never mind. Not a lot to report. I mean, essentially a lot of Zoom meetings between last meeting and this with the district, on top of which, and the reason for so many Zoom meetings was the fact that we had the council composition issue in front of us. And so I was pretty focused on that and had meetings not only with the district, or following meetings with the district, I should say. I'm not on the committee, but also meetings with other organizations, particularly those from Muskoka Lakes, so Muskoka Lakes Association and Friends of Muskoka, councilors from Muskoka, etc. And while a lot of time was consumed, I'm hopeful that we're headed in what I consider to be a more positive direction on that. So aside from that, a lot of contact with constituents also about this particular matter, but a few other matters, including some of the things that we discussed yesterday. So I think that's the end of my story for this month. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Douglas.
Thank you. much like my fellow councillors, with COVID, we're a little bit lower keyed as far as getting out and having face-to-face contact. So I've had quite a few conversations with constituents and various business owners, some that are really struggling with this COVID, and I might just sort of put out there that some of the relief from the government is just not hitting our smaller businesses, which is really quite unfortunate. They don't qualify in one way or the other. So I think we're seeing some major struggles going on in our township with our smaller businesses in that regard. Also, I've been in conversation with Jennifer Gross from OPG in regards to having a virtual meeting for the community in regards to the Watershed. Just for, I think it would be we talked about this a little while ago, and of course we've done it with Mayor Coutier and myself and our president for Go Home Lake Association, just to give us a rundown how that pre-Watershed is going. But I think it's would be beneficial for us to have a seminar on a virtual meeting so that all of the community could link into. So I'll pass that on once we get that organized, if anybody wishes to join us. Also, I've been having lots of conversations beginning conversations with Delaney Arnold from the Georgian Bay Biosphere in regards to a community garden up in MacTier. So we're just at the beginning stages of that, of course, trying to get that organized. I also have somebody a lot of community members, but also somebody who stepped forward with a possible new internet provider to provide high-speed internet to MacTier and up in this area, some of the lakes. We're having absolutely zero luck with the big companies, Bell and Rogers and so on, in getting fiber optics up here, and MacTier has been bypassed as far as fast internet goes. The big lakes have it. Why we don't have it up there, I can't understand it, and we keep getting the runaround from Bell. So I know that we wrote a letter last year from council in support to Bell, and I'm assuming that we've heard absolutely nothing back, and many people have contacted them, and it's just a big runaround. So stay tuned for that one. I'm just working with this fellow who would like to step up and has got other towers in various places, who's willing to provide that service. Aside from that, just working with business owners and some people I've got somebody requesting township land, have to deal into that one further, and for a private road. But we'll come back with that one when it gets a little bit further down the track. That's it for me. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Hazelton.
Good morning. Thank you. I want to just make a few comments here. I have not participated in other council meetings, and so we had a matter come up in Newmarket where they were dealing with an environmental matter, and I thought, what a great opportunity to sit in and see how other councils and cities work. So I found that fairly useful and helpful. I have had the opportunity this month to meet with the board of the Honey Harbor Association. The objective was to discuss ways in which the Honey Harbor Association may be able to be more active in representation of matters of community interest. And so we've seen some of that as a recent letter coming out from the Honey Harbor Association. And I was also invited to share a message that was broadcast to members. So I'm feeling a little bit better about some of that exposure. I participated in the Indigenous training this month and found that in some respects shocking, but very informative. And it kind of pulls out kind of embarrassment about what our forefathers have done, but perhaps there is a path forward that we can all do better together in the future. Some of you may remember Gord Miller, who was our past environmental commissioner for Ontario and very much on top of environmental matters in Ontario. One of my constituents set up a meeting with him, and I was able to sit in and listen and observe that conversation. So that was very interesting. As is usual, many calls with constituents on a variety of matters. Also, I attended last night, sorry, Stephen, I'll jump out on this on the library board. But last night we had our library board, and for those who don't know, our CEO of the library has resigned to take a position outside of the library world. And so there is a very active search underway right now for a new CEO of the library. But I can't really claim that I'm a huge lover of libraries, certainly from the past, because I tend to do most of my reading online and have it more technical material. But I learned something yesterday that I just wanted to share with you all, and that is that through the library has access to 3,000 magazines. And what I have understood in the past and still know is that magazines often are a great source of research. And so I have found a new path here to perhaps new sources of research that may be helpful for matters that may come up in township. And finally, we are going to be talking about committee structures later on. I like to, as I've kind of just alluded to a second ago, I like to do a lot of research. And so I have done a lot of research on the committee structures and other townships in Ontario. I've shared some of my stats with you. And I'm looking forward to continuing this path of research on every topic that we get exposed to. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Jarvis.
Thank you, Al, for all the research. We had committee adjustment January 15th, Indigenous training, as Al mentioned. I did that as well, and I found it quite enlightening. And I like the term he used as shocking in some situations. Some of the stuff that went on for longer than I thought it had, and it's amazing that even within our lifetime, residential schools were active, which actually blows my mind. That type of thing. Anyway, it was a good program. I attended the Roma meet and greet, which was a Sunday before Roma, just to get a handle on what was up there. It was a small group, but it was well informed. That went well. SegBay, we had our SegBay meeting last week. The interesting thing is the members of the SegBay board that are in the real estate business, either real estate directly or doing mortgages, most of them tend to head south in this time of year, and indeed one or two of them have, but all of them, the ones particularly in real estate, were saying that they were real happy that they hadn't been able to go south because they've been busier and all get out this time of year in light of COVID and people's demand to try and move out of the large urban centers. So that was very interesting to hear that. Obviously, businesses are suffering, as has been suggested already. That wasn't talked about so much, which I thought was interesting. Anyway, it was a good meeting. And then, as Al noted, library board was the last night. I would like to commend the work that Tracy Fisher put into the library. She was a very energetic and outgoing and go-get-em type personality, and worked really, really well with the staff of the three libraries that we have in our municipality. And she did a marvelous job. Her talent and her efforts will be missed, but we are now we have interviews coming up now for replacement. And we've had applications from as far away as, where was it at? We had applications from, I know it's Carolinas, actually other countries we've had applications.
Mumbai.
Was that?
Mumbai,
that was it. So just a sign of the times. Anyway, that's all I've got to report.
Thank you. Councillor Yanko.
Going last always brings back bad memories from when I was in school. I was always the last person to be involved in everything, so I don't know.
Well, there's two more that are going to report after you on this.
Being a W, and that's always bad. Okay, just going to look at my phone up here. A number of things that I was involved in the last month. Obviously, the composition, the district composition meetings. I observed 2 of them, and I think, well, are you going to report on that? I guess you'll report on that. The mayor will probably report on that, so I'll leave it with him. The next day, I had an executive meeting with the SSCA. Because of the budget issues and a lot of questions from the various townships, we're going to have a fireside chat with the various mayors from all the various municipalities in the SSCA area. Next was we had our strategic plan for the airport at Muskoka Airport. And that itself was about a half-a-day meeting going over that strategic plan. And there's still some unfinished business associated with that I've been working on with a couple of the pilots out there. Also, we had on the 19th of January, we had our executive meeting for the Muskoka Watershed Council. Surprisingly, we haven't had one for a single year. Those used to be quarterly, and we just had the one this year. Basically, it was to approve the 2021 budget. And again, I had another SSCA regular board meeting, and that was to go over the 2021 budget and an update of what's happening there. And there should be some material probably in your package next month on what's happening there. And I believe that's pretty well it.
All right, thank you. I will admit I've had quite a busy month the last month. Following our last council meeting on the 12th, I attended the Township of Muskoka Lakes Council meeting. They had a special meeting with regards to the modernization committee and the council composition, the district council composition. I found that very interesting to listen into. And I've been following that. There were numerous phone calls from various people, elected and not elected, in regard to council composition. It was been a very active topic. And on the 14th, I attended a vaccinations call for mayors by the province. And that was interesting to listen to, shall we say. Didn't get me a vaccination, but still interesting to hear their plans. And of course, it's a moving target. 15th with the Committee of Adjustment. On the 17th, I spoke to numerous people at Oak Bay. On the 18th, we had a Municipal Modernization Committee meeting, followed by the District Council meeting. On the 19th, the Georgian Bay General Hospital made their announcement of some significant funding they have received. And in the evening, I attended the Port Severn Community Garden initial meet and greet meeting. I mean, it was online, but it's sort of meet and greet. And I'm quite pleased to see all the enthusiasm that we have amongst the various people in our neighborhood to get a community garden going. I think and that is planned for the front yard of the administration building next to the Township Hall. And so you'll see evidence of all that next time you are in that neighborhood this spring, shall we say. On the 20th in the morning was the Board of Health, the monthly meeting, which of course have changed quite a bit in the last year, given the COVID situation. Probably occupies about half the time. And then a meeting with the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing, and a biosphere meeting on that day. The 21st was the Indigenous training, and I'm appreciative to hear the comments of the other two councillors who attended that. I do believe that Indigenous training is extremely important, and I'm really hoping that we as a council and township can get more of this information out to more of our constituents, give them more opportunities. And during this year, it was one of my goals of last year, but of course, COVID kind of got in the way. But I think, we can offer more things electronically, and I'm really hoping that is something we do. On the 22nd, I had my session, as you all did, with Strategy Corps, and I found that very interesting because I'm afraid we went off in various tangents, and they were probably more interesting than the initial topic for me anyway. So it's interesting to talk to people who have experience with municipalities across the province. 25th, 26th was the Roma conference, and Ms. Gumby and I attended numerous delegations. Most of the delegations were with the district, and they were more successful getting delegations this time than we were. I have no idea if it has anything to do with the fact that Graydon Smith is now the president of the AMO organization, but that's fine. Interesting enough, the number one topic that I think I heard, and not only in these delegations, but overall in the conversation, and to your point, Councillor Douglas, was the internet, broadband access, however you want to describe it, is clearly a huge issue in the rural communities of this province. We're not unique, but a couple of our challenges are a little more significant because being on the Canadian Shield makes it a little more challenging than being in a farmer's field. But there was also talk about long-term care, finance models, hospital funding, Muskoka Watershed, conservation reserves, more about funding. And finally, the last meeting of Tuesday, Ms. Gunby and I met with Jim McDonnell, who is the parliamentary assistant to the regards to municipal affairs. I'll say our MPP, Norm Miller, was in attendance there, as he was in numerous other meetings. And we were basically talking about the frustrations that we sometimes have serving our constituents when we're doing it via the district versus directly. And I will tell you that I was enthused by the positive reaction I got from both Mr. McDonnell and Mr. Miller when I said, well, I would like to compare their township to the archipelago and Seguin to our north, because they are single tier municipalities, and whereas we are a lower tier municipality, and their response and their interest in that I thought was extremely positive. And their encouragement for us to apply for municipal modernization funding to look further into the matter. And I believe part of this will include looking at whether various responsibilities of the district can actually be more effectively downloaded to the township, along with the appropriate tax dollars, of course, versus going via the district. And two items that come immediately to mind. One is solid waste collection, and another one is roads. You know, I understand that we have numerous so-called district roads in our township that never leave our boundaries, where we collect the taxes are transferred to the district, who have the responsibility for maintaining those roads, and then they subcontract much of the work to the township to get done. It seems to me a little bit of a cumbersome process. I just use those as two little examples, and I won't go on further on that topic right now, but I was quite cheered by our response and encouragement, and that I think that there's something we can look further into. On the 28th, I had the honor of chairing the Indigenous Leadership Roundtable of the district. I find these meetings to be very helpful, and it's basically a touching base with each other of what everybody's up to, both within the various municipal councils as we understand them, but also the Indigenous leaders of the area. And I find these very useful meetings. I'm very appreciative that they are continuing to be organized. On the 29th, as Councilor Mankel already referred to, there was the district had a committee of a whole meeting with regards to the airport strategy. And that was, I think, took all morning. And on February 3rd, Municipal Modernization Committee meeting, which is basically the 6 councillors and the chair of the district, the 6 mayors. I think we're making headway. The reason I say I think we're making headway is we seem to be landing, and this is nothing's finalized yet. We seem to be landing on having 18 counselors versus the current 22, which will be 3 counselors from each lower tier municipality. Part of the issue that remains is that the towns that have enjoyed control of the last 50 plus years, or maybe it's exactly 50 years now, don't really want to give it up. But at the same time, the townships say, well, we want to have an equal voice. And so we're looking at how do we resolve those matters where if tradition is anything to go by, there might be a split vote. I think it's very important to point out that probably at least 95% of the votes are nowhere near evenly split. And so we're only talking about a few key issues that get split and how we're going to resolve them. And our next meeting is scheduled for this Thursday evening at 6 o'clock, I believe. Yes, that's what I have in my agenda anyway. I have meetings scheduled for tomorrow with numerous people to discuss things before we get into that. So that is going to continue. I should also mention on the 4th, last week, Thursday, the district had their required public meeting in regard to this matter. And we received input from numerous members of the public, but the whole meeting lasted about 1 hour. And I would say that almost all the input we received, with the exception of a few letters, are leaning in the same direction of having the towns and townships equal and trying to make and having a structure that's relatively simple. There's been a few people who think the district council should be much smaller than 18. And well, on the one hand, I agree. On the other hand, I don't think we're there yet. And I think that's premature in my personal opinion, especially given the other challenges we have between the upper and lower tier, and let me call it the split of responsibilities. I think that's it on my list of meetings, and I will pass it now over to our CEO, Ms. Gunby. You can correct me on all the meetings that you were in with me.
Pretty much everything I've done in the last month has been covered by each and every one of you, so I have nothing new to update you on.
That's it? Ms. Gunby, that was almost boring.
I'm sorry.
Okay, well, you should be. All right, so then we're going to move on. If I can flip my piece of paper.
Can I ask Jessica a question?
Absolutely.
Jessica, what's our staffing issue? What positions are outstanding that you're working on right now?
Deputy clerk. And a contract for accounts payable.
Sorry, what was the last one?
In the finance department, in accounts payable.
Okay, so is this 2 positions?
Yeah, and that one's a contract because of the current person in that role is on mat leave.
Yeah, because I think you had a bit of a domino effect. Did you not recently?
Yes. We did a lot of internal hiring, so it kept opening up a new space and a new space and a new space.
Yeah. Councilor Bocek.
Just a comment on today's mayor and councilor's comments to the people that attended the Indigenous training. Great job, guys. I come from a family here in this house, a blended family of Indigenous and British. And when you guys were talking, there was cheers in the background here from some of the kids. So well done.
Thank you for saying that. Okay. Staff reports. We have 2 staff reports in front of council for this morning. The first one being Financial Services Report 2021-05, Incentive for Taxpayer Feedback. Ms. Bootsiet, I believe this is yours.
Thank you, and through you, Your Worship. The short of this report is that offering a survey there's no real financial consideration that we could do through the Municipal Act. So we looked at taxation rebates and stuff like that. So this was a request that came forward in 2020. And we also looked at user fees, which is usually a fee for service. So neither of those two apply for an incentive. And while we were building this report, we thought that this matter was of greater scope than just finance. We think the clerk's department would probably need to be involved in terms of possibly privacy of information. There's definitely a sustainability piece on what should be part of this survey, also a council engagement piece. Therefore, our recommendation was that council task the CAO to put together a workforce to build this survey for and with council.
Okay. Council, your response to this. Actually, I'm going to read the resolution first to remind everyone, and then we'll discuss the resolution. It's moved by Councillor Bocek, seconded by Councillor Wienko. Be it resolved that council receive the report for information purposes, and that council directs the CAO to put together a work group to explore the opportunities, risks, and limitations of gathering residents, users of service, and customers' information, and that a preliminary report of who the members of the work groups, including preliminary findings, be brought forward in the third quarter of 2021. Councillor Hazelton, followed by Councillor Wienko.
Thank you, Mayor. I would like to make a few comments on this, and that is that the idea of studying it, I think, is useful. Council have previously directed staff to seek if there is a way in which we could charge for waste management services on a per cottager basis or per property basis. And so the concept of what is being discussed here of doing something that is not mill rate based is already an outstanding request of staff. We haven't had that answer back yet. I would certainly like that answer before we draw any conclusions here. But one of the things I mentioned earlier that I've done a lot of studying of other municipalities and committees and so on. And it would appear to me that given this interest of trying to find a way to first of all, gather resident contact information, and in the process of doing that, perhaps incentives to achieve that, that this is something that any work group that could be defined probably should be a committee staffed with councillors, as councillors are very opinionated, if you will, and are tasked with representing the community, where we could collectively work, councillors and staff, and there may be even some lay people on the committee. But what I've observed is most other townships have tons and tons of committees, and we have almost none. And the ones that we have rarely meet.
Councillor, you know the topic in front of us is not on.
I know,
Okay,
but the last paragraph before financial consideration is that a work group be created to design and capture the information. Well, we have heard from various councillors over the last year of the focus on trying to capture the information, and I think that that the recommendation is heading in the right direction, but the recommendation and the discussion we're having later on committees are very, very much a hand-in-hand strategy on how we move this township forward with effective representation on these kinds of interests. So what I'm trying to really stress here is that not only should we receive the report, but that the second clause, the and that clause, which talks about a work group, needs to be reflective of the community discussions that we have later on.
Thank you. Councillor Rienko.
I think any form of working group should have a heavy number of people from the cottage associations. I would think 80% of the people in the township have an opportunity to belong to some of these cottage associations. I know in our lake, we have addresses and emails for more than half the people on the lake. And I think that's probably goes for most of the other associations. So there is a communication network out there that we really haven't tapped into. And I think that's an important group that has to be involved in this working group. I know people obviously in MacTier and Port 7 and Honey Harbour aren't really represented by these groups, but I think the majority of people do have ways of being able to communicate with their cottage associations. And I know there's a group of cottage associations that get together. They haven't got together in the last 6 months, but they have been getting together and talking about this issue. So, there's already some activities going on out there, and I think we should tap into that group.
I trust that our CAO, who's been given this direction, if we pass this resolution, is taking notes in this regard. And there she appears.
And here I am. And I also just wanted to offer that I appreciated Julie's use of the term like workforce or task force and not committee, because the committees take more work. And I would see this project as having more of a laid back discussions with those interested, not needing a clerk to set an agenda or pass resolutions, things like that. Just having a more free discussion and not actually calling it a committee of council. It's more of an internal working, and then we'd report back to council with what we found.
Okay. Anyone want to make any further comments, or should I read the resolution? Councillor Jarvis.
I'll just offer apropos of what Councillor Rienko just stated, that I think there'd be buy-in from certainly the cottage associations up the bay in this to a certain extent. I'm not sure how much information we want to glean, but I think people like to be informed, and this is certainly one way of getting everybody on side. I know that social media today is a cobweb of different approaches, be it Facebook or many of the others, and I'm just trying to figure out what would be best. But I think going to the associations and to the public is the best way to do that. So I commend the idea, and I hope we can move forward with it.
Councillor Cooper.
Just briefly, I certainly think we do need to communicate with our cottage associations, although I think we do. I think we send a lot of information to the communications directors or presidents or whatever of those cottage associations, and do they forward it? Sometimes, sometimes not. So I think the initiative of getting direct access to our constituents is important. Thank you.
All right, and the only comment I want to add to that is not so much against what everybody's saying, but we also have to remember that if a significant portion of our residents are not members of these associations, and I think that is part of the challenge that we have to recognize as we look into this, is that there are a lot of people who either by choice or just by geographical location do not belong to any of these associations. Do I need Councillor Hazelton?
First of all, thank you for stating what you just did. We have that problem in Spades in Ward 4, where we don't have any association that represents more than maybe 25% of the community. And so getting a message out is a challenge, but I'd like to highlight that people are habits of creature, so to speak, or creatures of habit, whatever their way to phrase it. If you get material from an association, you historically understand the topic areas that will be covered by that association. And the messages that we often need to get out from the township aren't related to the messages that would come out from an association. And having it come out under a different banner will capture the attention of the recipient and be received very differently. And so I think it's absolutely critical that we continue down this path of trying to ultimately get to a point where somebody in our staff can push a send button and it goes to an enormous percentage of our population, and it's a message from the township. And that is essentially the path that we're on. And by the way, I would also expand the issue of contact, and Councillor Cooper talks about this all the time. Who is our customer? Well, we have 18,000 customers according to the district population stats, but I would hazard a guess that the names of contacts covered by associations would probably be less than half, maybe more like a quarter. And so we really have a much, much bigger problem than sending it to a community and having them distribute it to their members, because it's a much bigger community, that 18,000 people. So anyway, I think that all that needs to be well understood as we go forward. Thank you.
Councillor Rienko.
Again, I'm just wondering how important this particular project is. People who want to know what's going on in the township have a couple of opportunities. They can go on Facebook, or they can submit their email addresses and so on. So those who really want to know what's going on in the township, there are processes in place and they know about that. So again, you almost have to do a survey to find out who is interested in hearing what goes on in the township. And so that might be something to look into, because maybe we've got all the people that want to hear about it and everybody doesn't really care. So I think that's an issue too that has to be addressed.
Okay. Councillor Cooper? Sorry, Councillor Douglas, am I seeing your hand? I'm going to let Councillor Douglas go first, Councillor Cooper, because she hasn't spoken yet.
Thank you, Mayor Coetzee. Yeah, I'm inclined to agree with Councillor Wienko on this one. I know there's an enormous amount of people who do not want to give their information out. They feel the government is controlling them enough. So we might have a bit of an issue capturing everyone, and I'm not quite sure how we would do this for privacy. Anyways, but that's all to be looked into. But I suspect we have a number of people that really don't want to hand it out. So I would agree that our cottage associations capture some, but not all. Our three villages, yeah, we don't really have associations in any of them that would have that information. And I think that's really problematic for people getting information that even want it. I know there's ways that them to access it, but some of those people don't. They're not savvy with the computer, so that creates some problems there. So I think we do have a situation that we need to look at as far as gathering information from those who may want that information, but aren't getting it from one reason or another in the villages mainly.
Right, thank you. Councillor Cooper.
Yeah, I mean, the idea of a survey is a lovely idea, but I think we want to get somewhere with this. And I think in terms of privacy and who wants messages and so on, one of the ways to deal with that is people do have ways of unconnecting if they want to with certain organizations if they're getting information they don't want to see. So I would assume that if we were able to get connections with our 18,000 residents, and some of them don't want it, all they have to, I think we'll have to do, I'd like to hear what our staff have to say with this, but I think there are ways of ensuring that if you don't want to be getting things, you say, click on this and I don't want to hear from you again. Thank you. So I suggest we blast on. Thank you.
Okay. Do I need to read the resolution one more time? Okay. Well, then I'm going to say all those in favor. And that is carried unanimously. All right. Financial Services Report 2021-08, 2021 Capital Budget First Draft. Ms. Boots, yep. Tell us how you want to spend our money.
Through your worship, this is a compilation of the senior management team's capital request for 2021. I reiterate that we did not prepare a 10-year capital plan because we are in the process of revising and producing a new asset management plan, which will have the capital plan inclusively and adjustable with the use of our software moving forward. So this is a 1-year 2021 plan. It falls in line with the tax incentive, tax supported capital that council approved in the 2021 operating budget, and also it includes 140,000 funded by grants and 328 funded by reserves.
Oh, the mouse gets away from me. Thank you very much. I really appreciate, and I'm looking forward to your asset management plan that's coming out later this year, because I know this council has expressed a real interest in long-term capital funding and being responsible, if I can put it that way, as opposed to just ignoring what's coming down the road. So I think I speak for all of us who say we're looking forward to that report. In the meantime, for just 2021, councillors, any questions of our treasurer in regards to her report? Councillor Wienko, followed by Councillor Bocek at this point.
I went through the list, and one thing just jumped out at me, and it was audio-visual systems for the council chambers, $100,000. Can somebody explain how $100,000 is going to be used in the council chambers?
Yes, so I don't have the specific data, but our audiovisual equipment in council chambers is very dated. It's been at end of life for approximately 3 to 5 years now. We're very lucky that it hasn't collapsed or malfunctioned during any of our council meetings to date. The estimated cost of the current system is about $50,000–$60,000. And we're looking at just the equipment supplied and installed, probably around $60,000 again. And then we need to tweak some electrical, where we estimate between 10 and 20,000. And then the rest of the funds will go to finish off the room. So, beautifying the space, repainting, and things of that nature.
A follow-up comment. First of all, I doubt if we'll be back in the chambers this year. So I don't know if the money needs to be spent this year, but $100,000, I have a problem with that. That could do a lot of good elsewhere. I'm not interested in spending that kind of money for the chamber, and again, I don't think we're going to be back there this year anyway.
Thank you. Councillor Bocek.
I'll keep it short. Most of my comments were covered by Councillor Wienko, but perhaps we could take some of that budget money and buy Julie a set of earbuds and a microphone so I could hear her a little bit better.
Councillor Cooper.
Yeah, I'm very much in agreement actually with Councillor Wienko and Bocek in terms of not really needing to do anything this year. And I would also like to say that the world is changing with COVID and Zoom. And I think another sort of aspect or consideration of this, which we need to consider at council, both frankly at the Township of Georgian Bay and the District of Muskoka, is figuring out a way to have some of our meetings or some of the attendees to our meetings, even in the future when COVID is behind us, hopefully, that especially in the winter months, long distances on dangerous snowy roads, that we need to think about how to accommodate our councillors that come long distances And Zoom seems to be a pretty sensible approach and inexpensive approach as opposed to $100,000 in camera equipment. So I'm going to be suggesting at future council meetings that we need to address this issue. So thank you.
And just before I go on, I'm just going to interrupt to say that it's interesting your comments, Councillor Cooper, because as you may know, Chair Klink brought that up at the district level, that in regard to attendance at meetings and his observation that he thinks to be fewer people not attending, fewer people who cannot attend meetings because of weather and things like that, that they've always faced in the past, especially during the winter. I saw our clerk stick her hand up, and Ms. Buttigieg, I'll let you respond, our clerk, and then I saw Councillor Douglas, and I think Jarvis, did I see your hand as well? Yeah, okay, so let's go in that order. Buttigieg, Way, Douglas, Jarvis.
I bet Clerk Way and I are probably going to say the same thing, but this new system has been designed for hybrid delivery of council meetings, because our current system, we cannot plug into a Zoom platform or something of that sort. So that would be also the purpose of this expensive capital purchase, because some of you may want to be in chambers, and also mostly for attendees who would like to participate in a portion of the meeting or a delegation. They would be able to do so virtually, and the platform could remain with Zoom or anything else of a hybrid system.
Thank you. Clerk Way.
Yes, thank you, through your worship. I would just like to add on to Ms. Buttigieg, most of which I was going to cover, but this would be the year to do a renovation or upgrades to the system because the room is vacant. So this is, we've had lots of conversations regarding, the age of the equipment and when would be the best time to move forward with any type of upgrades. And the fact that the space is currently empty is beneficial. But being able to meet again in a room is always helpful for multiple reasons, including the fact that we don't lose council members partway through a meeting because of technology issues. So I don't know if anyone's more stressed about that than I am when I have members disappear from a meeting, but that's something we would hope to avoid in the future. So I think staff I've heard your concerns, and certainly we've had lots of discussions about what needs to happen in order to get to a place for this to work on both areas.
Thank you. Councillor Douglas.
In terms of that, well, that's really informative. That answered quite a few of the questions, but I just want to express too that I think that we need to know a lot more about what goes into is what you're thinking about for a system, because I have to agree with Councillor Cooper on this one. I mean, we would like to think that things are going to change this year, but I mean, I think the platform we're working with right now is something that we really need to try and improve before the chamber itself, because I foresee this being a little bit longer term. Unfortunately, I'm hoping not, but if that's the case, I think we need to get this under control to be able to be more inclusive and more stable. I don't think we've had too much problems, but that's just my thought on this, and spending that kind of money this year on that may not be the best plan.
Thank you. Ms. Buttigieg, followed by Councillor Jarvis.
Two quick comments. The approval of the amount in the budget is not the end go ahead. We still have to RFP the system, even though we've got a design in mind. We're still going to go to market and get proposals, and this will come back to council at that point. But if the amount is removed, there's no further work that's going to go forward in this on staff's. There's going to be no work plan around this capital item. Also, I think we can't anticipate the future, like many of you have said, but if all this goes very well and vaccines come out and within 2 months we're able to go back in person, we won't have sufficient time, if we haven't done the work already, to get the systems ready for reaccommodating council unless we go to a full in-person meetings like we did before. So there's no opportunity for hybrid if we postpone this work. And we won't have sufficient time to move quickly on the matter.
Thank you. Councillor Jarvis.
Yeah, I appreciate the explanation on that $100,000 for that equipment. I think things seem pretty reasonable. I don't see any problem with that. It's nice to get the explanation behind it, which leads me to the next question is, who's getting the electric vehicle? Yeah, I thought it might be the mayor. I want one too.
In my dreams.
Yeah, where the electrical vehicle, I'm curious because I know we're setting up the chargers. Is there a vehicle being made available to our staff, or what's that going to be, Julie?
Yes, through your worship. So this is an initiative we've applied for funding. It's a COVID resilient infrastructure funding. And the purpose, really the reason is that we currently are sometimes short vehicles for staff because of that every staff has their assigned vehicle at the moment, and the cleaning procedures and stuff like that. So we're no longer, jumping two or more in a vehicle to go to a work site. Every worker is taking their own vehicle, which is leaving us sometimes stranded to be using our own vehicles. And I think Ms. Schneer could speak some more about this because she's the one who wrote up the grant application. But this one is pending a grant, so if we don't get the grant, we wouldn't be spending that amount.
Right. Okay. And then finally, I presume we will be getting an update on the Honey Harbor waterfront plan.
Yes.
There's a fair bit of money in the budget for that this year. So, okay. Thank you.
Ms. Schneier, I'm sensing that you want to put some input into the electric vehicle.
Oh, as soon as I hear electric vehicle, your worship, my antennas go up. I get excited about the opportunities.
And when is yours coming?
I ordered mine in 2019 and it is still in factory. So, but I hear the factory is moving to Oakville, so I'm happy about that.
Okay.
Now, I don't know what more I can offer to Councillor Jarvis's comments, your worship, but through you, I will say that as our Director of Finance, Julie mentioned, if there's no money, there's no car. So the electric vehicle will be an ambassador opportunity for our municipality. We will definitely wrap it with insignia to let people know that we are doing our work as public servants in the environment with zero carbon output and showcasing the ability to do work while being responsive and protective of the environment in our community. It's a great story. If we do get it, I pretty much ask Julie every week whether she's heard about this, because it really will showcase what municipalities can do with new technology, especially when you live in a biosphere, which is what we do. So I'm excited about it.
Thank you. Councillor Yanko, followed by Councillor Cooper.
Well, just getting back to the AB stuff, couldn't you apply for some modernization funding for that? That sounds like something that we could use that kind of money for, because we are hopefully modernizing our system. And if you need $100,000 for that particular project, sorry, Jennifer, but I think electric car would become second in my priority to the AV system if that's what's required. But didn't I read something last week or the week before that there was more money coming to the various townships and so on from the provincial government? How is that? How much are we getting, and how is that money being spent?
Ms. Boutier, Ms. Gumby.
They don't just give us this money, we have to apply for it. So we have a few ideas of what we're going to apply it for, but I can talk with Julie offline about that.
Well, maybe the AV system is something you can use.
Yeah. As long as you apply, please. Okay. I saw Councillor Cooper, but I think he was pointing, even though it's the wrong direction, my monitor, towards Councillor Hazelton. I don't know if that was your intention.
It wasn't. He was first in line. You just happened to miss him. So he goes before me. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Hazelton.
Thank you, Mayor. I am delighted to hear all this talk about hybrid sessions, but we don't have any policies in place that would allow us to handle that. And our CAO has frequently in the past accepted informal direction to bring a matter forward without having a resolution or motion. So I guess what I'm trying to get to here is we have an outstanding policy bylaw, which hasn't come back to us yet. And perhaps now is the right time to put some language in that policy bylaw that would enable hybrid meetings based on the direction that I hear that we are going in. So, I think we have an opportunity here. I certainly wouldn't want us to wait until we get the technology to begin thinking about the policy requirements for a hybrid meeting. So is that something that staff can just pick up and run with, or do we have to bring a formal resolution forward?
Ms. Gunby.
Thank you. I'm just going to ask the clerk to verify because there is legislation requirements and I'm not sure if at this moment we can even do it. So I'm not sure if putting it in the bylaw would even make sense, but she can answer that.
I think it might be premature at this point. We've made significant progress on our procedural bylaw. I think while we're still under a state of emergency or a declaration of emergency, I think it would be best to leave that out. As we've talked about before, it's a bylaw that we're able to amend. It's kind of like a living document, so to speak. So if we're at the point when this is ending and we know it is safe for us to go back into the council chambers and knowing what those regulations would and would not look like and the specifics of exactly how our equipment would function, I think that would be the time to bring forward amendments either to the procedural bylaw or implement a policy that would permit the use of a hybrid option. But at this point, I think it's still a little premature given our current circumstances.
But I think you're hearing from council that we would be, that we'd be very interested in the hybrid model as soon as it's, let me call it, legally available. We don't want to be caught flat-footed, I think's the expression.
Yes.
Councillor Hazelton.
I have a follow-up, totally different topic. And I'm just...
As long as it's this agenda item.
Oh, just agenda, absolutely. I see that there is significant monies being allocated to parking upgrades at Miners Bay. And on one hand, I have no objection to parking upgrades. I think that they are needed. My question, though, really is, can you give us an idea of cost recovery on that from parking and what timelines you're going to have for that? Because I can assure you that the community that go in and out of the marinas in Honey Harbor would love to have all kinds of funds to assist in parking for that community. And if our township is funding another community, I can expect all kinds of feedback of, well, why are we spending $200,000 in that area? Why isn't it handled by a private operator like all of Honey Harbor? So can you give us, I mean, if it's cost recovery, I get it, that's fine. I can sell that. But if it's not cost recovery, if it's investment, then I'd like to have some talking points that I can use to settle down the troops, so to speak.
Mr. Sokash, are you appearing because you want to respond to that?
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm appearing because I expect to be asked to respond to that by the CAO or the finance person. So the timing for it, we're hoping this year. We've put in an application to purchase some land to expand the parking area as well as the boat launch area. I'm going to be talking to the M&R on Thursday. I haven't been through this process before, so I don't know how long it takes or exactly what's involved. We do have a couple contractors that are interested in the work because they need some of the rock, which would dramatically reduce the cost. As for cost recovery, At the Port Severn parking area, we make approximately $20,000 a year. And I would expect we'd be in the same magnitude up at Miners Bay. And the plan is to put in a pay and display at some point with, passes for local residents, et cetera.
So you'd expect a 10 or 15-year turnaround payback?
Through the mayor, in that ballpark, yes.
Thank you.
Councillor Douglas.
I'm just wondering, I'm thinking that part of this expansion, Brad, you might want to correct me. I think Councillor Cooper's really wanting to speak. Anyways, I think part of this is it not also to expand the parking lot for the new possible garbage facility? Like, just correct me on that one. I know that we're working with private individuals right now, hoping that that can be a part of it, but am I right about that, or was that part of it?
Through the mayor, we were hoping that there would be some contribution that could be made from the district. The area they're looking at right now for the waste disposal isn't used for parking. So I don't know that they would be contributing very much towards this project, and I've just assumed nothing for now until we can try and twist their arms some more later. But I don't want to have an unreasonable expectation of council that we're getting money from the district when we likely are not, or we're just getting minimal money.
Okay, Councillor Cooper.
Thank you, Mayor. And I didn't give up my opportunity to go quite that long. But anyway, I just wanted to add in a couple of things before I talk about the parking issue and waste management issue in a certain area. I wanted to just finish up on what we were talking about, which was hybrid meetings and sort of a chicken and egg situation we're in right now, where do we buy equipment? Are we going to have the ability to have hybrid meetings? And I guess what I would suggest is that I think we are in a chicken and egg. And so I think it might be wise to set the dollars aside to do this, but we need to get to the bottom of the hybrid issue to just, in my mind, to justify spending this kind of money. So I would suggest that to a direction to staff along those lines. I'd go on to say that I'm becoming more convinced that maybe we do need this equipment at some point, because I think it's important that with the kind of communications that we are dealing with today, electronic communications, you need good equipment to be able to understand people and their voices, et cetera. And I've noted that a number of the district staff, our district chair, go to the district meeting rooms to attend Zoom meetings because the equipment and maybe it's I don't know whether they have fiber optics there or not, but clearly the communications are pretty good. So I think if we had proper equipment, perhaps in our building, perhaps our staff could attend Zoom in an environment where the communications is more, where the communication tools and equipment are better than what we're seeing sometimes. So I guess I wanted to support that. As far as this issue of parking and waste facility in one location, my only comment is that I really don't like looking at something individually when we have a much broader issue and we still haven't got to the bottom of it. So taking one location and spending a lot of money, and then we find out maybe 5 months from now that we've got to spend $2 million fixing all the facilities in Honey Harbor, where we have a huge number of people coming through. So I don't like onesies. I'll call it a onesie, and this is a onesie. So I'm concerned about a fix of that nature. Thank you.
Councillor Douglas.
Just wanted to respond to that. I think Brad just said he didn't think it had anything to do with the garbage. So I think this has to do more with the parking expansion. which is really necessary up here in Go Home Lake for the volume that's going through. And I think the idea of putting in the ticket facility for and passes for the residents is a fantastic idea. I do think it'll be a huge generation of income. But I don't think it has anything to do with the garbage, actually, Councillor Cooper, as he's just indicated.
Okay, thank you.
Maybe it should. Thank you.
All right. Currently, the resolution in front of me is moved by Councillor Hazelton, seconded by Councillor Douglas. Be it resolved that Council receives a 2021 capital budget draft number 1, and the Council agrees that the presented capital budget is in line with the guidelines provided to staff. And the Council directs staff to prepare the 2021 capital budget bylaw as per the draft presented. And that Council agrees that staff may start drafting the related procurement documentation as the 2021 capital budget is approved in principle within year of approvals in the sum of $2,164,273,000 and reaffirms the prior approved sum of $2,604,142 for a total projected budget of $4,768,415. And the Council limits capital purchase intended to be purchased by grants to only be purchased should those grants be successful. Any further questions? Councillor Wienko.
Just maybe help me out. Give me an idea of which projects will come back to council for final approval when you go out for the tenders. I don't think we're giving carte blanche approval to go and spend all this money and all the project, and there's no final approval by council. But maybe you can help me out and indicate which ones will come back to council for final approval.
Ms. Wood, yeah.
Through your worship, I believe our procurement policy says that an information report comes forward with the awarding of the RFP.
But that means.
And so we don't have any final approval on any of these capital programs? They're just done and we're informed?
Ms. Way.
Procedurally, all of our information reports are listed under consent, and as you do every meeting, you have the right to pull and deal with any of those items separately. If there's further direction or different direction than the information provided, you're able to do so at that time.
So we approve it through the consent, but we do get the chance to approve.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Any other questions? All those in favor? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All right, 6. All right, that has now been carried by everyone, or approved, or whatever the right word is.
Thank you very much.
Shall we jump into some of the new business now, or would anybody like a 10-minute break? Those hands are going up for what? 10-minute break. All right, 10-minute break. Let's reconvene at 10:45, please. Okay, it's 10:45. I'm seeing a few of my fellow councilors here. Well, let's get this back and rolling again. The first item on our agenda under new business is the Georgian Bay Association's Coastal Protection Advisory Committee. And Councillor Cooper, I believe you put this item on the agenda. So over to you.
Thank you, Mayor Kutzier. And just to start with, this is not a committee of the township, but rather a committee of the township, the Georgian Bay Association. And that's for this reason for this request, just that they have asked that the three municipalities within the coast of Georgian Bay put forth a representative for those particular municipalities. And so, as I understand it from the executive director of the GBA, the archipelago has recommended somebody, and I believe Carling has as well a member. We have community members that are coming from our area to that committee in terms of constituents, but they wanted also a coastal counselor from the township of Georgian Bay. So the long and the short of it is I'm suggesting and recommending that Councillor Hazelton be our representative on that committee. And I'm quite confident that he'll express what needs to be expressed about what's going on in our township, and also get back to us with how things are developing. But I think it's an excellent idea for the GBA to have a committee like this, because it's basically, it says Coastal Protection Advisory Committee, but it's environmental protection, I suggest to you. So I think this is a good committee and we should participate. And so that's why I've brought this forward. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Before I open up to council for discussion, my first question would be, Councillor Hazelton, would you be willing to serve on such a committee?
As a matter of fact, I would, yes.
Okay, I saw Councillor Bochuk's hand. Councillor Bochuk, I'm going to and followed by Councillor Wanko. Let's discuss.
Thank you, Mayor Kotzier. Councillor Wanko and myself do represent a fair community on the coastal Georgian Bay, basically from Lock 45 all the way down to Honey Harbor. My main focus is on the inland lakes, because I know the coastal Georgian Bay issues are well covered by the three that are exclusively on the bay. So I would have no reservations in supporting the nomination of Councillor Hazelton to this committee of the GBA.
Thank you. Councillor Wanko.
I'm supportive of the idea. It's probably a good idea for the coastal Georgian Bay to have this type of group. A couple of things, though, I think we should make sure that happens. Having Councillor Hazelton be part of this should be put into our. I think we have in the township various committees that we assign people to. For example, I was assigned to the SSCA. I think this should be one of those other committees that we assign a counselor to, and I guess it looks like it's going to be every year. So, every year this comes up and we assign a member from Georgian Bay to this committee. So it should be official. So it should be put into our process that this is a committee that we normally support. That's the first thing. The other thing is, I assume this committee will look at both environmental and planning issues. And when it comes to planning issues, I think there's obviously some unique planning issues in Georgian Bay with water levels and a few unique issues. And I want to be careful, but if you're talking about planning issues, you only look at planning issues related to Georgian Bay and not necessarily planning issues that might be, could be implemented for all of our township, because there is an inland community that may not need the planning issues that you have in Georgian Bay. So I would be careful that way, that we only talk about planning issues that are pertinent to Georgian Bay. And on the environmental issues, I think it'd be a great idea that if this group could review all the environmental programs that are going on in the Bay. So there is, as people keep saying, this overlap. I don't believe there's overlap, but people keep saying there's overlap. So it might be worthwhile to have this group look at the environmental programs. And I know Councillor Hazelton's concerned about the one in North Bay, South Bay. Yeah, have this group review it, and to find out if this group considers it worthwhile continuing or being modified and so on. So I think it'd be a great double check on that particular project. So that and other environmental programs that go on in Georgian Bay, it'd be great to have this group feedback. And the last point I want to make, if this is going to be a committee, a member of council on this committee, I would like to see this particular committee submit, or I'm not quite sure if you got to put quarterly updates out, but you know, our township should get copies of all updates or any major, well, maybe minutes of meeting, I don't know. But you can discuss what each of the townships would get in the way of communication from this group. And so we all know what's going on. As you know, SSCA gives you a lot of material, quarterly updates, minutes and so on of their meeting and so on. So they keep us well informed. And I would expect this committee to keep us well informed going forward.
Thank you. Councillor Douglas.
Yeah, I think this is a great idea. I think Councillor Hazelton will do a great job on this committee. He's got real dedication to the environment, as do most of us. But also, I would agree with Councillor Wayanko. I think it would be, I'm not sure if they're planning, it's obviously just in the beginning stages right now, but if they're planning on doing minutes, it would be, I think, really of great interest if Council Hazelton could bring those minutes to council each month, if you're meeting each month, or just so we have an idea of what's being discussed and where your direction is. And the other thing that I would just say a little bit too is also on the planning issue. We already have a planning committee, so there may be some overlap there, but I'm just a little bit curious as to how far down the track you want to go here with planning, or if that's even a part of this. But I think it's a great idea.
Thank you. Councillor Jarvis.
Yeah, I do think it's a great idea. A little bit of cross-pollination, as I call this, is always good. The feedback will be good going both ways. I understand the concerns voiced by both Councillors Wienko and Douglas, and agree. And I think it's inevitable that once this committee gets its feet on the ground, they will be setting up their parameters. And I think it'll be critical that feedback both ways will be part of the committee structures. And that's the only way to do it. I think the reason it's there is so that we do get feedback and that they do understand, you know, that there will be, I mean, there are a lot of different groups on the Georgian Bay right now that do different things, whether it's a Biosphere Reserve, Georgian Bay Forever. GBA is sort of an overarching entity. And I think being part of that will allow for a big eye opener for everybody to sort of see what everybody else is doing, get the feedback. I think it'll be essential. That's one of the reasons the committee is going to be there. And two, obviously keep in mind, I'm sure this will be something that they keep in mind, that you don't want to be doing one thing for one area that isn't totally applicable to some other area. So there'll be a lot of communication, I bet, coming through from this, as I said, in both directions. So I think it's a great idea, and I really appreciate that Councillor Hazelton has agreed to take on this role. Thank you.
I'm going to only add the comment that if they're an advisory committee, then they better give us some advisory-ness. CEO Gunby.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just wanted to clarify for Councillor Douglas, well, in all council really, that when they state that they're going to be discussing planning matters, so I've already been in discussions with the association about what their goal is, and they're going to be reviewing the official plan as the letter states in the agenda, the official plan and the zoning bylaw for all of these areas to see where we do things similar, what ideas sort of work best for anyone, and if anything, that information can go to the planning committee if council chooses, or it can go right to council, whatever they sort of suggest. But they're not looking at specific Georgian Bay policies. They're kind of looking at an overarching to see if we can sort of get on the same page.
I think it could be a great source of information.
Definitely.
Councillor Bochek, you want a second row go at this? Oh, change your glasses.
I actually have to read for a change. Two things that I'd like to get some clarification on, and this is no way reflective on the leadership at the GBA, because I'm very enthused with us getting involved with this group because they're such a well-organized group. But one, I would like to see the terms of reference of this committee, and I think the terms of reference for this committee should be scrutinized by maybe our CAO and our clerk, just so that we know exactly what the terms of reference of this committee are. And my second point would be, would the member of council be a voting member on this committee? And if so, would it be perceived that his vote is reflective of the township of Georgian Bay, which I think is concerning to all of us, that we would have an individual representing us and possibly voting at this committee, and his vote would definitely be perceived as being council's or the township's position. So I guess I'll ask a question to Ms. Gumby.
CEO Gunby provide the initial response, and then Councillor Cooper.
Thank you. The mandate of the committee is in the agenda. It's attachment 2 under the matter. So that's their terms of reference. They just call it mandate. And really, I don't think that our staff should get involved in scrutinizing or reviewing anything they've put out, like as their committee. It's their terms of reference. If it was a committee of our council, yes, definitely. But I don't see us sending any sort of suggestions or corrections to something they've already decided on for their mandate for their committee.
Okay, and for my second part of the question, which is the more important part, because I was expecting an answer like that, would be, how would Councillor Hazelton be a voting member of that committee, and how would his vote be perceived?
I'm just going through the terms of reference, and it doesn't state that people on the committee are not voting members, so I can only assume that all members vote, and I can't comment on how anything at this meeting would ever be perceived.
Thank you.
Councillor Cooper, followed by Councillor Rienko.
Thank you, Mayor. I think if you read the terms of reference that are here in front of us, we can see a number of things, including their constituent members, as I mentioned already, coming from the township of Georgian Bay and other townships. There are actually 5 areas named: Georgian Bay, Carling, Archipelago, Killarney, and basically the North Shore Manitoulin. So this is an advisory committee. They're not making any decisions for us at all. It is not our committee. We're sending somebody to represent the township of Georgian Bay, and that would be just one member of as you can see, a fairly good-sized committee who plan to, it looks like, meet quarterly. And so I don't really think it's our job to tell them how to operate this, other than we can see the terms of reference and they look pretty good. I would also remind us, unlike some of the other references, including SSEA, we're not providing even any funding to this organization. So this is their committee, and we are fortunate to have been asked to have somebody represent the township of Georgian Bay on this committee. But it would be one of, if they vote on anything, it would be on an advisory matter, and it would be one vote out of 11 or something like that. So it's pretty broad stuff, and I would assume most of their, and if you read the mandate, most of the issues would be based on input from that committee, and on, if there were recommendations coming forward, it would be very broad based. In other words, if it's good for the North Shore of Manitoulin, it's probably, and fish farming or something like that, it may apply to our area as well. So those are the additions that I can give to that. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for the response, Councillor Cooper. I did not delve right into the nitty gritty of the terms of reference. So I was looking for clarity, and you were kind enough to give it to me. So thank you.
Councillor Rianco.
Yeah, I think Councillor Hazelton is astute enough to realize he's basically representing the Georgian Bay, and he really can't speak for the inland community of our bay. So that's fair enough. The question I have, and I don't know who can answer it, if this group is going to be talking about environmental issues, is there going to be an opportunity for some of the environmental groups on Georgian Bay, like GBF and the group that Mary Muta belongs to? Are they going to be members of this committee, or what? Does anybody know if some of these environmental groups are going to be on?
Councillor Cooper. Well, okay, all the way Ms. Way.
I am not aware of any of members from those organizations sitting on the committee. I'm sure they will be asking for input, just like we do at the Township of Georgian Bay. We hear from Georgian Bay Forever, the Biosphere, etc. I can ask that question of Rupert Kindersley, the executive director. He's pulling this together, but I'm not aware of those organizations being directly on the committee. I suspect they will make submissions and be consulted. Why wouldn't they be? Thank you.
Ms. Way.
I was just going to refer Councillor Wanko back to the mandate, which outlines the membership that states the president, executive director, and representatives from the Georgian Bay Archipelago communities to be nominated by the chair and approved by the board. In addition, each of the municipalities in the region will be invited to appoint a representative to the committee.
And I also, if I may, their purpose, the first sentence, and I directly quote, "The purpose of this initiative is to establish base data on the current status and main features of each municipality's strategic plan, official plan, and comprehensive zoning bylaws, compare them, and then share information on the results with the partners in the project." So their initial purpose, their initial review will be on our strategic plan, our official plan, and our comprehensive zoning bylaws, and compare them to those to the north, our municipalities to the north. And I think from that exercise, we can, all of us along the coast, learn what others have done that we haven't, or perhaps done better, and perhaps they can learn from where we've done better. Because it's interesting that there are some differences, and sometimes significant differences, between each municipality. All right. The motion reads, moved by Councillor Cooper, seconded by Councillor Bocek. Be it resolved, the council receives a request from the Georgian Bay Association regarding the Coastal Protection Advisory Committee mandate and council representative, and that council of the Township of the Georgian Bay appoint Councillor Hazelton as the council representative on the GBA Coastal Protection Advisory Committee. Councillor Hazelton.
Two quick things. Number one, I won't vote on this. And secondly, could you please spell my first name correctly? It's got two A's, not an E.
I didn't know I spelled it incorrectly.
Well, so I'm just looking at the resolution in the package, and it's.
Sorry, through your worship, Councillor Hazelton, the resolution has been tweaked from that initial submission that was provided, and it doesn't reference your first name at all.
No.
Okay.
You're strictly a Hazelton in this reading.
Perfect. Perfect. Anyways, I won't vote on this to avoid any issues or images of conflict.
Councillor Cooper.
Sincere apologies to Alan Hazelton, AN, on the spelling. That's my mistake. And it's not the same resolution anyway, but thank you.
Councillor Cooper. All those in favor? All right. So this is unanimous -1 because Mr. Hazelton did not vote.
Thank you.
Okay. Alan with 2 A's, I think you're the next, we got the next topic, and that is water quality monitoring discussion only. That's item 10B.
I don't think we need a lot of time on this. I think we've talked about it extensively. I think the last time we reviewed it, we had set aside up to $30,000 for this project. And we can see from the budget breakdown on page 49 of 73 in the package that they are asking for just under 30,000, and they've given us a breakdown. So I kind of look at this as just confirmation of information. I guess the only other thing that is potentially different is they are asking for use of our facility, and I think we want to approve that.
Sorry, what was the last sentence you said?
I think we want to approve that. You know, they're asking for the use of our facility to do their work. So they're in the budget. They're saying 28.6 and use of a room that can be used to carry out their analytic tests during the summer in Honey Harbor, which we have previously and casually referenced it as the meeting room beside the old library in the ground floor of the town center building, or the park landing bill, whatever you want to call it. So the implication is that we would set aside that room for the summer for them to do their analytic work.
Ms. Gunby.
Thank you. Through your worship, I have been in discussions with them since our last meeting, so that is something that we're working on, finalizing and figuring out the details.
Thank you. Councillor Yanko, followed by Councillor Cooper.
Yeah, just on that, Jessica, when you talk to them, I have no problem using our facility at Honey Harbor, but if it's being used as a lab, I would be concerned about maybe some of the chemicals that they might be using in some of their work, and those chemicals would go into our septic system. So I think you want to be maybe ask them what type of things are going down the drain so it doesn't affect our septic system.
I will verify that with them. Thank you.
Councillor Cooper.
And just for clarification, CAO Gunby, we're talking, I believe, about a room underneath the library in Honey Harbor, which is pretty tiny, something like 10 by 12 or 10 by 10 or something like that, sort of like a bedroom in size. And is that correct?
Yes.
Thank you. It's I'd say a pretty modest ask, and I think the idea of ensuring that we don't have any sort of chemical issues is important, and I'll be interested to hear what they have to say. Thank you.
Councillor Douglas.
I think it's a great idea. I think the program itself has been shown to be quite informative for us, so I have no objection to this at all. I'm just kind of curious, what's that room being used for in the past, or is it just sitting vacant?
So when you walked into the library on the main floor of the building, and the library would be on the right side, this room is on the left side. It was like a meeting room. It wasn't ever dedicated to one thing. It's always been empty every time that I would go in there.
Okay.
But council will see a final lease agreement. Like, we're not just doing this behind the scenes. Council will see a final agreement when we're ready to go.
Oh, I'm sure we will. I just was curious because I was trying to visualize what was in there before. But anyways, thanks for the clarification.
Councillor Jarvis, followed by Councillor Bochek.
Yeah, just to clarify, that room was, when the library was in that building, that was called a community room, and it was available to any community group that wanted to use it. So in fact, the library is now out of there, so it's not affecting the library's use at all. So that part of that building as it stands is basically vacant. The room is available to whoever I presume. And I don't know if Ms. Schneer is around, but it's still a community room. I presume it's our property. We can use it as we see fit. I'm curious. I mean, this is a follow-up question. It's got nothing to do with their discussion. I wonder what we're going to do with that building. Anyway,
That's
Let's
a
not
whole
go
other
there right
conversation.
now.
So there you go. Councillor Douglas, it is what we know as a community room, and yeah, it ain't big, but it's a good facility, good size, and good to work in. And I agree with Councillor Rianka. We got to make sure that they aren't putting anything down the drains. It shouldn't be going down the drains.
Councillor Bochek. Oh, move.
Yeah, I agree with Councillor Hazelton that this should be included, this space. My concern is slightly different, and that is we just signed a lease, or we're just in the process of signing a lease with the tenants on the upper floor. And my concern would be that the community room that was next to the library may not have proper ventilation for the chemicals, the LG stink, the whatever. And it may cross-contaminate through to other businesses that are leasing that building. So my concern would be that maybe we should ask the people that are considering moving in there what type of ventilation would be needed to the exterior, and obviously there would be a cost associated with that, and that can be thought of during the time of granting them permission to use that room. Thank you.
Okay, Ms. Gunby, are you wanting to speak?
Yes, I was just going to advise that I'm definitely going to be asking them if they are using any chemicals. I'm not sure they will be. Like the last time we spoke, they said the only thing they need is room for a fridge. So I don't think any sort of upgrade will be required, but I still will verify with them that information.
Okay, now my question is, I have no resolution, and because you're already working on this, I don't believe you require a resolution to go forward.
Correct.
But you know you have council support and
Yes.
direction to resolve this without endangering any of the neighbors.
Yes.
All right, can we move on to the next topic? Alan with 2 A's. I'm going to repeat that a few times so everybody doesn't forget. Councillor Hazelton, the next topic is yours as well. Increased insurance rates discussion only.
Thank you, Mayor. I wanted just to kind of set the frame for this. I went through the CIP and I saw all kinds of letters about concern for insurance costs. And I concluded after reading several of them that this topic might be relevant to our township. So I reached out to our CFO and asked her for her comments. And she suggested that, first of all, yes, the concerns that are expressed in these other letters are absolutely concerns of our township. And she has suggested that you know, the fact that there is a lack of competition, only 4 companies under the right municipalities, is a problem. You know, the municipality may consider that there should be another not-for-profit service for municipalities, similar to what has been done in cost sharing for the OPP. Anyway, she's made a variety of recommendations. I don't want to steal her thunder if she would like to speak to this. But I guess the essence of this all is that we have significant creeping insurance costs, and this is being done in a for-profit environment, which, given all of the municipalities, it seems like there is potential for significant profit taking at the expense of our taxpayers. And then there are other issues of joint and several liability, which we've talked about before, where it seems that in the current wave of litigious nature people, they sue everybody, and the township gets caught in the crossfire on matters that perhaps previously we didn't get caught in crossfire on. And so I felt that it was important for us to, first of all, understand the issues and and recognize that lots of other municipalities are providing support and writing letters to the province, suggesting that the province should be doing something different to help support the interests of the townships. And I'll pause there and try to put Julie on the spot and ask her if she would like to comment further on this.
Ms. Boudier.
Through your worship, no, I think Councillor Hazelton has summarized my concerns. I totally believes that if council was to do anything, a support letter stating that we support the initial initiative would be great. We are no different than all the other municipalities caught in this insurance expense. And yes, our 2020 insurance has not gone up as much as everybody else's, but it still has gone up way more than cost of living.
Thank you. And certainly the issue is in front of the province and it's being raised on a regular basis. And I'll say to council, if we were to give direction to staff to draft such a letter, I would be very willing to sign it. Any further discussion? Okay, do we need a resolution or can we just give direction, Ms. Boutiette and Ms. Gunby? Hearing nothing,
Sorry, I panicked.
You're not supposed to panic.
Oh. And now my iPhone's yelling at me. I didn't find the word panic. I would suggest a resolution stating that we support the letter, and then we can send that resolution to them.
All right, Ms. Way, you're on it already, aren't you? I knew that. It's always handy to have people who are a step or two ahead of you. We're waiting for that magic screen share, I'm sure. I'm trying to fill the void, and I don't want to say repeatedly, Alan with 2 A's.
You're never going to live that one down, Alan with 2 A's.
Well, the good news is I have a lousy memory, so I'll forget for next meeting.
I just find it amazing that I keep thinking of my name as being so simple, and yet I think there's 30 different ways that people can spell it, and it's rarely the right one.
So true, Elaine.
And I suppose if I were in Quebec, you wouldn't call me Al, you'd call me Hal. Hal Hazelton.
Oh, good. Ms. Way is going to rescue us from this conversation. Be it resolved that council send a letter of support to the municipality of Charlton and Dac to immediately review the recommendations to investigate the unethical practice of preferred vendors who are paid substantial amounts over industry standards despite COVID-19 delays, as insurance premiums will soon be out of reach for many communities. And that this motion be provided to the Honorable Doug Ford, Premier of Ontario, the Honorable Rod Phillips, Minister of Finance. Is he still the Minister of Finance? The Honorable Doug Downey, Attorney General of Ontario, and all other Ontario municipalities.
He is not the Minister of Finance.
I didn't think so,
No.
but we can modify. We can just remove the name, Rod Phillips.
Yes.
Council, is this the gist of the letter you like prepared? Okay, I've seen heads nodded. I only see some of the folks here, so Councillor Jarvis, I think I see your hand.
Thank you. And thank you for not calling me Stefan. There is the issue, sometimes with these CIPs, you get a lot of different correspondence about the same thing. And I'm wondering if we should be supporting not only that one jurisdiction, but a number of other jurisdictions that have also contributed to letters that we have in the CIP, or is just the one enough? That's the only question I have. Otherwise,
Sorry, generally, so the fact that the municipality of Charlton and Dac were the ones who initially put forward the fulsome resolution requesting all this change. So we're just going back and supporting that initial one.
Perfect. That makes sense.
And that initial resolution includes the joint and several liability issue. So I think that's an important part of it.
Yeah.
Okay, all in favor? And that is carried. So moved by Councillor Hazelton, seconded by, let's say, Councillor Jarvis. And I don't have it written in front of me, but we'll call it carried. And we'll go on to Councillor Hazelton, last name only this time. Correspondence received from Lorna and Rob Larson in regards to construction noise at Wolverine Beach.
I wanted to start off this discussion by saying that we have a fairly comprehensive letter written by one of the neighbors. I can tell you that I've had communications from several of the neighbors, all expressing the same concern. And you may all remember that I think it was last year, I brought forward a request to revisit the noise bylaw. And at the time, I was told that the township doesn't get very many noise bylaw complaints. And I started digging into it, and then I realized very quickly that human nature is, why waste my time when there's no path to provide any benefit or any fix? And so our current noise bylaws are, I can do anything I want, any noise I want, between 7 a.m. and 11 p.m., basically 7 days a week. And with that kind of structure in place, there is no teeth for anybody to do anything to bring sanity for neighbors who actually want to enjoy their property. And so when somebody who has a complaint calls or goes and discovers that that's what the law is, they immediately shut down or stop wasting their time, because they know that there's nothing that they can do to get relief from the problems that they're experiencing. And so I think this letter is actually very effective. We have a situation where this isn't a small construction project that took place over the period of 4 to 6 weeks. It was basically an entire summer season. And as I say, many neighbors have reached out to me. I was pleased that one took the time to document it and come forward with it. But I think what, to me, this says is, contrary to what our statistics show, we have some serious noise problems in our township. And going over and talking to your neighbor and suggesting that he tone it down, in some cases may work. In other cases, I've had people where I've suggested them take that strategy. They've told me that they've gone to their neighbor and tried it one more time, and their neighbor said things like, complain again and I'll take you out. So when there are no bylaws in place that provide relief, there is no way that anybody can get any relief. If there are bylaws in place, then we as a township can actually decide, and we do, we decide when we want to enforce the bylaws and when we don't. So personally, I think that this matter is starting to creep back into our fold, where we need to start to do something about it. I know that last time staff kind of sidestepped the bullet and said, we really don't have statistics that prove we have a problem. But I can assure you in Ward 4, we have a problem. And I'm not sure about some of the other wards, but I think this letter is, for someone to complain, it takes a fair amount of effort, and I have to be really pissed off to complain. For someone to go to the effort that this resident has gone to provide a very powerful report, I think is much more speaks much more volume to the nature of the problem. I'll
So
pause there.
you're wanting staff to review our noise bylaw, perhaps compare it with some of our neighbors for ideas and basically come up with more restrictive hours?
Yeah, I mean, I think we need, as a township, to respect the fact that there are a lot of people that come into the township that would like to have some time window during the day when they can enjoy their property without being bombarded by noise. And right now, we have nothing that provides that. You know, maybe they get to sleep at night, but they certainly don't get the opportunity to enjoy their place during the day.
Ms. Gunby, would you require a resolution from council or a direction?
Resolution, please.
Okay, so we'll have Ms. Way, as our conversation continues, we'll have Ms. Way type away. Councilor Jarvis.
Maybe while we're waiting, we can just discuss the situation at Wolverine Beach. I presume permits are in place for the work that they were doing there. Is that correct? Or is that something we should also be looking into?
I did send the information to Victoria and Dave, and they were looking at that. I don't have the answers for you at the moment.
That's fine. Okay, thanks.
But Victoria might.
It's from response that we did get from our CBO, permits were issued and he had no other comment about anything outside of any permits being issued.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Wienko, followed by Councilor Bochek.
Maybe Councillor Bochek should go before me, but I think we got to be careful about shortening up on contractors' hours during the summertime, because that's when they make the money. And I'm afraid, you know, their priority to make a living working as many hours as they can may be a priority over noise. I know it's not be a popular thing to hear, but they can only make the money for about 6 or 7 months of the year. And so they can start early and go late. So I don't know how you're going to satisfy those individuals.
Councilor Bochek.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Well, I agree with the concept that Councilor Hazelton has brought forward. There's so many circumstances that the contractors face that allow them only to work at certain times of the year. A lot of us in the contracting business would love to work at different times of the year, but the MNRF does, you know, you can't start work until March the 15th and you got to be out of the water by whatever. There's a lot of circumstances outside of this topic that would have to come into play. I understand and sympathize with Councilor Hazelton's reason. I've gotten 2 emails about Wolverine Beach from constituents in Ward 4 that know me personally, and that's why they contacted me. So there obviously is a site-specific problem maybe at this location, but yeah, we need to be really cautious. And I mean, maybe even look at if we do tighten it down and we decide, okay, hypothetically, Monday to Friday, 7 till 7, hypothetically. And you have to obtain a permit from the township in order to work outside of those hours or make noise outside those hours. And through that permitting process, there would be consultation with neighbors and everything else. So I'd like this to be a little more encompassing than just change the existing document. I would like it looked at from all points of view.
Thank you. Councilor Cooper.
I'm in support of the concept of trying to do something here, but I think we need feedback from and recommendation from staff, because if we make a distinction today without a fulsome story, shall we say, I think it would be ill-advised. But, you know, as for instance, that Councillor Bochek talked about, maybe it makes sense from 7 to 7, 5 days a week. I don't know, but contractors may also want to work on the weekend, but maybe it needs to be more limited. I don't know. So I was thinking it might make sense to do a little bit of homework on this, see what others that do have some control over when the hours of contractors in other municipalities. One of the ways we can learn is to be seeing what others are doing. Yep. So that would be part of a report, I think, before we jump on this. Anyway, that's just my thoughts. Thank you.
Yeah, no, I certainly wasn't suggesting we jump on it. Be it resolved that council directs staff to conduct a review of the noise bylaw and report back to council regarding options for additional restrictions or enforcement options. I think that leaves it nicely open. Thank you, Ms. Way. Council, any other comment? I see Council Hazelton, and also I'm going to go to our chief, Chief Undam, to our fire chief, to make his comments, and then I think I saw Councillor Hazelton first, and we'll let everybody else have another round of.
We're not sure. This way, when we give
we did a review of the noise bylaw last year, and one of the concerns going forward.
We're hearing two voices.
Sorry, I'm on another conference call there at the same time. So,
okay.
I just want council to be aware. We did a noise bylaw review last year. We surveyed some of the municipalities surrounding us, and that, and our bylaws pretty. It's pretty close to some of the other ones around us. The other concern that I have going forward right now is people are back talking to councillors, and the bylaw department is not getting that dialogue. So we have on file one complaint from Wolverine Beach. That's it. So if councillors are going to take this feedback, for us to have some solid data to be able to support any decision to go forward, we have to be in that dialogue. So if somebody's complaining to you about the noise at any location, we need that information to come to the bylaw department so that we can track it. If it's done, that it ended up being a one-off situation, that's fine. But at least now we have some data, because council's going to be sitting here to make a decision, and we don't have the data to support the decision for or against, because, like as I just said, we have one complaint on file. So if to Councillor Hazelton's point, that if it's not if they don't believe it's going to make a change, they're not going to do it. If they're talking to you, they're looking for something, and we need the feedback. We need if they don't want to fill that complaint up, at least now that councillor, you gave us something that we can say. We had 12 concerns that were brought to us, but we only have one actual complaint. So it's very important that as councillors, if you're getting that information, feed it on to us so that we can look at the data to be able to provide that data to you to make a decision based on what's happening out there.
Chief Undam, I think you make a very valid point that I think as all councillors, we should, if we receive complaints of on any matter, or even compliments, we should pass it along to staff, because staff should know what's going on. Okay, Councillor, where was I? Who last spoke? Councillor Hazelton, I think you were first in line, and then I see Councillor Bocek's hand.
So first of all, I'd like to thank Tony for his comments. And if I have erred, it is in not recording the complaints that have been brought to my attention. However, anytime somebody brings a complaint to my attention, I explicitly ask them to go and file it officially with the township, because I know that if we don't have the data, it's tough for us to make effective decisions. The fact that people have not been doing that is frustrating to me. But again, this comes back to the mantra that Councillor Cooper and I have been on forever, which is, if we had a CRM system, we'd have visibility into these things. And if we thought people were complaining and they weren't, we would immediately know, and we would be able to go back and make changes to that. But that's a bit of a rant that I'll step off. But I think in this case, what I wanted to highlight is it's one thing to have a construction project, and I certainly respect Councillor Bocek's comments about contractors have certain work windows that they have to work in. This particular situation is and was an all season, every day, every day, all season long issue. And that's really beyond it. I mean, a construction project, you're going to have noise, a little bit, perhaps over a 4 to 6 week window. We even heard that up in the McCain properties, up in Cognisheen, the contractor turned off the backup beepers on the construction equipment because they were the most offensive. And maybe you're not supposed to do that, but they were trying to respect the cottagers up there and be more respectful. So I think there's a lot of things we can do, but we're back to, if there's no bylaw that says I get to enjoy peace and quiet at my cottage or my property within reasonable windows during the day, then there's no ability to enforce anything. And so I think we need to.
You're repeating yourself now, Councillor Hazelton.
Okay.
Councillor Bocek, followed by Councillor Douglas.
Well, I certainly appreciate Tony chiming up on this because he makes a very good point. But just for a point of clarification, the two people that I received on Wolverine Beach received emails from were simply asking me what the noise bylaw was. So I copied and pasted and sent it to them. And their concerns were that the work was going on outside of the time allotted. And they were quite satisfied that I just sent them a copy of the noise bylaw. If they had anything after that, hopefully they would complain. That's what I instructed them to do. We have a similar problem here at Oak Bay. We have a big grinding machine that runs nonstop, grinding all the rock over there that they've blasted out. And again, I've simply forwarded the noise bylaw and said, if they're working outside of these hours, please, do a formal complaint. Maybe we need to look at that system. Maybe it's a little difficult for them to use. And of course, there's the anonymity thing that comes into play all the time too. So I like a review of it.
Councillor Douglas. Sorry that I missed you before.
That's okay. Yeah, I'm hearing a lot of similar things that I would be saying, so I'm not going to go overboard here repeating, but I think it's a good idea to take a look at the policy again, or the bylaw rather. But I will reiterate what's being said here. We have to be a little bit careful, and I mean, bar the fact that I'm a contractor, we do have limited hours to work. Generally speaking, most contractors don't work on the weekend, so maybe that's something we should be looking at. Generally speaking, they don't. And maybe there's an application that has to be put in if they do want to work on the weekend, but we can maybe discuss that during the process of looking at the bylaw itself. But it is a difficult situation for all contractors. It's a very short window to work within. Generally speaking, starting early in the morning is preferable because of the heat in the summertime. But I would agree. I don't see why construction work, unless it's something around M&R or otherwise, should be going into 7 and 8 o'clock at night. Generally speaking, we like to knock everybody off at 5 or 6. That's a long day for most contractors and their employees. So I would be in agreement to take a look at the policy and the bylaw to see if there's something that we can do to tweak it to make it work for residences as well.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Way, did you craft a resolution? I'm sure you'd like to share it with us. Be it resolved, the council directs staff to conduct a review of the noise bylaw and report back to council regarding options for additional restrictions or enforcement. I'm going to have that moved by Councillor Hazelton, seconded by Councillor Cooper. Councillor Bocek, you want a third round at this?
I sure do. I think we're tasking our fire chief and staff with a very broad spectrum of things that he'd have to look at here. I think we need to narrow this resolution down to deal with construction noise. We don't want him looking at fireworks again and looking at party houses and dock parties. And I mean, it's a very encompassing bylaw. And the point that was brought up by Councillor Hazelton was construction noise. So I don't think we need to task our chief with a complete review of the whole bylaw. I'm sure his time is a little more important than that. I wonder if we could make it more specific in the resolution.
Ms. Gunby.
Thank you. I recommend leaving the resolution just the way it is, because if he comes back or Karina comes back with information about just construction, something else will come up and you know, you just might as well take a look at it once at the same time.
Any other, excuse me, any other comments? Councilor Yanko.
Maybe at some point, and I don't know if Tony's already done it, but give us an outline of the types of complaints that he is getting on our noise bylaw. Are we getting a lot of complaints? What type of complaints and so on? I don't know if there's a quarterly or annual summary on the types of complaints that we are getting.
Chief Undum.
I can provide that for you. It's not at my fingertips, but I do keep statistical information with that. So I'll have Karina send you out an email of the noise complaints that we've received in the last year and their general topic of where they originated from. But I will ask council members that if you don't mind, if you could please send me something about what your concerns are with the noise bylaw so that I can make sure that as part of this review that we do look at that. So if it's construction then so be it. I know we'll be coming forward with the request for a noise exemption for the golf course again. So there's all these exemptions that are coming through. So if you put all your concerns forward, we can address it as part of the review to make sure that we're catching what you want instead of 2 or 3 times, and it takes us 6 months to get this completed.
Okay, thank you. All right, then I'm going to call for the vote. All those in favor? And that is carried. Thank you. All right. Councilor Hazelton, one more, and this is regard to revisions to municipal elections and revisions to Municipal Elections Act.
I asked this to be pulled out of the CIP. What I probably should have done is asked our clerk if she would benefit from clarification on the Elections Act to see if she needs help on it. But it just seemed that another community or other communities were faced with concerns of this nature, and rather than wait till election time, it might be useful to get clarity sooner. So could I ask our clerk to comment?
Yes. So, sorry, thank you, Your Worship. The voters list has always been a point of frustration, I think, for everybody when it comes to municipal elections. Our data currently is provided by MPAC, and we do not have access to the same list utilized by Elections Ontario or Elections Canada, which is certainly frustrating. We finally have strides in the change in the legislation to move this forward. However, it probably won't be in place until 2026 election. So nothing will be new in regards to how we obtain our voters list for 2022. So I think it's my understanding that this is really what this resolution for Mississippi Mills is specific to. It's more about the voters list and how do we get that updated versus some of the other changes. Like there have been a few little changes that have occurred in the voters list, not the voters list with Elections Act last year regarding some of the dates and timelines have been changed, which was kind of a odd timing to make those changes, but that's kind of what happened. So we know change is coming. It should be for the positive. It's just going to take longer getting there than I think most municipalities would have liked. Does that help?
Yeah. You know, and I'd also like to make the observation that the reason that Mississippi Mills is concerned about the electors list is that they don't want seasonal residents to be voting. And therefore, if we were to join this, we would say to our seasonal residents, we want you to jump through more loops and hoops before you're allowed to vote. And therefore, I wouldn't want to go in this particular direction because I think that would be offense to 85% of our population. Councillor Cooper.
Completely support your comments with respect to engaging as many people as we can in an election as opposed to as few. And we do have seasonal residents that do lease from their corporation a cottage, and it's not a shed, I can tell you, in most cases. But we want them to vote, and we should want them to vote, and be as accommodating as possible to our electorate, every one of whom that is eligible, including family members over 18, I believe, who have to be represented by us. So they are effectively like an elector. So I think we need to remember all that. We want to engage as many as possible. Thank you.
All right. Any other comments? Councillor Hazelton.
Yeah, my intent in pulling this forward was to initiate some discussion. I think I've heard from our clerk Way that there is some confusion in the world of getting access to voters lists. I can tell you that one of my constituents wanted to experiment with the idea of how do we get people on the voters list, and he had dialogued with Clerk Way, and she had said, well, we're not managing the list right now, so if you want to add new names to the list, you can't do that because the township isn't managing the list right now. And so the resident went on to MPAC and the My Voters list, and it was like hyper confusing. And it just seemed that if this, and I'm not saying that the content of what Mississippi Mills is trying to get at is what we want to get at, but the topic of a voters list and how do we get to a clean voters list, and how do we not create a nightmare for our clerk when it comes time to voting, what could be done, what should be done between now and next election time, so that we perhaps pass resolutions that will help our clerk have a simpler task of managing that process.
Okay, so to our clerk, Ms. Way.
Yes. So I do remember engaging with that resident. I believe it was last year, the year before. It was a while ago. And I applaud the enthusiasm, and I think it's fantastic. Unfortunately, there are restrictions under the Municipal Elections Act that say when we can and cannot alter and how. The biggest thing for us for 2022 would be supporting anything that MPAC puts out to have their data updated prior to the municipality getting what we call our PLE, our preliminary list of electors. And that PLE is what we're then allowed to have as the municipality to make our amendments and update that list. So technically right now, because we're in between elections, we don't have a voters list to legally update is the issue. So generally they have, so I think it started in 2010, voterlookup.ca. And that's one of the easiest ways for them to push for electors or those qualifying to vote to be able to update their information, and then MPAC will have that data, and then when they create their list, it will then be provided to us.
Ms. Way, would you want anything from council at this point?
No, I don't
Okay.
believe so.
Councillor Cooper.
I would just like to make some comments about MPAC and their list and our ability, etc. I've had conversations with our neighbors to the north, the archipelago, over the years. They maintain their own voters list. They use the MPAC, whatever they call it, PLE list, whatever the term is. They look at it, but it's so inaccurate that they rarely use it. They keep an Excel spreadsheet that becomes their voter list. So I just want to make sure that I'm not trying to argue with our clerk, but I do know that other townships manage their voters list. And I think we want to be driving the bus, not MPAC. Thank you.
Clerk Way.
I'm not sure how to respond to that other than the fact legally under the Municipal Elections Act, we have to provide and receive our data from the PLE that is provided to us from MPAC. And outside of that list, we legally don't have a voters list.
But what I'm suggesting here is we receive their list. We don't, as I understand it, it doesn't drive our list. I think it's a cross-reference. So I would like to hear some clarification on that. I don't need it today. I'll look into it myself. Thank you.
Okay. So there'll be no resolution coming from this item. So I'd say having now discussed it, let's move on to the next topic. And the next topic is Georgian Bay. Yes, Georgian Bay Association prohibited unencapsulated foam in docks. Councillor Jarvis, I believe this is your item.
It is. And I don't know that there's much discussion. Well, as much I need to say. It's all within the resolution itself and the background with the report. Presumably everybody's looked at it, but really what we're trying to do is part of the other groups in the Georgian Bay is contribute from a municipal standpoint some strength to the concept that we should be cleaning up the lakes as best we can within our own jurisdiction. And one way to do that from this is to have provide some teeth to the effort to clean up the polystyrene that is currently littering our shoreline because of the unencapsulated foam that is used in floating docks that is deteriorating as we speak, and even more so in the wintertime with the ice grinding away on it. So what we're trying to do without a huge cost to us right now is support and endorse Bill 228, which is a bill for keeping polystyrene out of Ontario's Lakes and Rivers Act. That has been put forward by Norm Miller, and I think the best we can do right now is to support it. And I think that in any of our other efforts where things come up from the Biosphere Reserve or Georgian Bay Forever or even the GBA, is that we support them in their efforts to educate everyone with regards to this stuff and help relieve our lakes of this plastic burden, which is going to be a greater issue as more and more of this foam breaks down. I'm sure anybody that's I would think anybody within the lake system, whether it's the small lakes or the Georgian Bay or anywhere else, will have seen this stuff on the shoreline, and it's ugly to look at, but it's also a huge environmental menace from the standpoint of wildlife, and so we've got to do something about it.
I'm sure I'm not the only one who's carried bags of that stuff to the dumpsters. Councillor Rienko.
I removed pallets from one of my floating docks a couple of years ago, and I was amazed at how much deterioration was in those pallets.
Yeah. Councillor Rienko.
Obviously, I think we should support it, but really what we're supporting is that if you do use it, it's enclosed.
Yeah.
So on the inland lakes, I would say probably 80 to 90% of the docks, the floating docks that we have, do have the styrofoam in it. It's a standard product for our inland lakes because we don't get the Georgian Bay storms and conditions that they have out in Georgian Bay. So I think it's a product that's probably more used inland than on the bay. But I do agree that it should be encapsulated. My dock right now, I've always had floating docks. My dock now I've lost, it's become uncapsulated. So I'm getting rid of my dock this year and ordering another one, but it will be encapsulated. But I think it's important that we do have them allowed to use polystyrene, but it has to be encapsulated.
Yeah, that's the point. And just to correct you to a certain extent, it doesn't matter where this stuff is. The stuff I took out of my dock had been burrowed into by otters, beavers, and muskrats and/or mink, and they were the ones that were ripping it apart. They make homes and nests out of it. They burrow into the billets themselves under your dock and live there. And that creates a huge amount of mess for the shoreline. yeah, the Georgian Bay weather will break this stuff down, but so does the sun. UV is everywhere, and this stuff over time just gets old and falls apart. So no matter where you are, if you got it, we got to figure out how to encourage people to get rid of it. And I think your efforts alone are a good example of that, Paul.
Councillor Douglas, followed by Councillor Bochek.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Jarvis, for bringing this forward. I'm just wondering, you know, is there, not that I haven't dove into this too far, but is there, when they say encapsulated, is there actually a mandate around that? Like, I mean, are they talking about plastic or netting, or what are they talking about? Because like you say, animals are burrowing into this. And I think that honestly, it's such a horrible thing to have into our lakes that it really needs to be, we really need to take a hard stand on this if we can, because I agree, from what I've seen in our lake coming through, that comes down from other lakes, it's coming out of our lakes. I've seen the animals, we've repaired docks time and time again where the muskrats and otters have chewed into it. And I think it's really, really bad for our environment. So I'm hoping when they say encapsulate, they're making it quite clear that that doesn't mean net or something of that material, because that's not going to stop it. Did you want to respond to that, Stephen, if I may ask?
Yeah, in response, within the report, the Bill 228 is titled Keeping Polystyrene Out of Ontario's Lakes and Rivers Act. And basically it's an act to prohibit unencapsulated, expanded or extruded polystyrene in floating docks, floating platforms, or buoys. So what we're trying to do, in my mind, it's small steps, is stop this stuff being used in the first place. Not to prohibit its current use right off the bat, because it's a huge expense to replace it, and we all know that. So the idea is to get people of the mind that it's not the thing they should be using if they're building a dock now. So prohibit its use in any construction like this right now. That's the idea of the act. And then I think it's a matter of other steps from there on in, where we slowly phase it right out of the lakes.
Councillor Bochek. Oh, sorry, Councillor Douglas, you had something more? Oh, Councillor Bochek.
So I think it's a great initiative and I think we should be supporting it, but I think we need to take responsibility here in our own township. The Ontario Building Code, as far as I know, and staff can look into this, really doesn't regulate what you use to float your dock. I'm not even sure that in the Ontario Building Code, it references docks because that's really a part of the MNRF because it's over water. But I think we should look at, yes, we have a problem, but let's stop the problem now in our township. And if there's not in the Ontario Building Code, then there needs to be in our bylaws saying that any construction of a new dock, which has to go through the building process and be approved, would not be approved if it uses an open cell or a non-contained styrene product. So we could possibly look at in our own municipality putting a bylaw together to prohibit the use of this. And if you apply for a floating dock and it uses this, it would be denied. You would need encapsulated foam.
May I suggest that we consider this resolution and then give direction to staff to come forward with a local bylaw in this regard?
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. I think we need to be a leader in this. We don't need to be a follower. And it's something that's very obtainable moving forward. What you're going to do with what happened in the past, I'm not sure of. That's what Mr. Jarvis is here to talk about. But I think we can put a stop to the use of it very quickly in this township.
Yeah, thank you. Councillor Cooper.
I agree with all that's been said, including being masters of our own destiny. And I just wanted to respond to the concern raised by Councillor Douglas, a good one, that is, what does unencapsulated mean? I think we all know, but it really means completely contained in some other probably type of plastic that won't allow the foam to be out into our waters. So just as part of that, doesn't have to be part of the resolution, but just the direction to staff to bring complete definition to the word encapsulated. So I don't think, consider things like, some sort of netting around it. That doesn't hold it in. Thank you.
All right, thank you. The resolution moved by Councillor Jarvis, seconded by Councillor Cooper. Be it resolved that, do you need me to read the whole resolution? Or have you read it in the book? I'll read it. Be it resolved that council.
I had intended, as a matter of fact, I think it's a little more comprehensive, which I guess is good.
Be it resolved that Council of the Township of Georgian Bay supports the Township of the Archipelago Resolution 19-210 regarding the initiation of an education program in cooperation with the Ratepayers Association, Georgian Bay Forever, Georgian Bay Biosphere, Georgian Bay Association, and the Great Lakes Mayors regarding the environmental impact of foam docks, including lobbying efforts to encourage the provincial government to ban the use of foam for docks. And the council endorsed Bill 228 for Keeping Polystyrene Out of Ontario's Lakes and Rivers Act 2020. And that the Township of Georgian Bay's resolution in support of Bill 228 be circulated to Norm Miller, MPP, Parry Sound, Muskoka, District of Muskoka and area municipalities, Township of Archipelago, Georgian Bay Forever, Georgian Bay Biosphere, Georgian Bay Association, and Great Lakes Mayors. All those in favor of this resolution? And that is carried. And further, I'm going to ask CO Gunby if she needs a resolution or simply direction to follow up on the what I would consider brilliant suggestion of Councillor Bocek that we also improve our bylaw.
Oh. You should know the answer to this by now. I do require a resolution.
Look at that. And Miss Way is there. I appreciate that. Moved by Councillor Bocek, seconded by Councillor Douglas. Be it resolved that council directs staff to review and report back regarding prohibiting the use of unencapsulated foam in docks. And I see Councillor Douglas's hand up, so I presume she would like to discuss.
I think it's a great resolution, great suggestion from Councillor Bocek. I just think that, you know, obviously Councillor Cooper picked up on what I was saying here. Whenever there's a gray area, you know, people use it. So I would like to make sure that they're in the report or when we discuss it, that encapsulated is actually, there's a definition to that. That'll be the only thing I'd say. But I think it's brilliant to do that with our MD leaders for it, because it is a scourge in our lakes and so on.
All right. All those in favor of giving Councillor Bocek a gold star? I mean, in favor of the resolution. All right, and that is carried unanimously. All right, that ends our new business section of the day. So we have a bylaw in front of us with regards to the appointment of a municipal law enforcement officer. On pages 70 and 70, well, that's page 70. I don't know if anybody wants to make any, Ms. Gunby, did you want to say anything about this before we?
I could just make it really brief that Cody Avery is the new hire in planning. He's our planning enforcement officer, and we need to give him this designation to give him the power to write tickets.
Okay. Now, would you like me to read the entire resolution, or has everybody read page 70 of our reports? Any discussion? All those in favor? Or is that a discussion hand that you're trying to put up, Councillor Cooper? Okay, sorry. Councillor Cooper, I apologize to everybody.
I have it all memorized. You were asking if I'd read it. Thank you.
Oh, okay.
I'm kidding.
With that discussion now completed, all those in favor? All right, and that is carried unanimously. Thank you. So, Council, it's now 12:04. We have a bit of a closed session to go through, and then we also have, of course, this afternoon Committee of the Whole. Would you like to initiate closed session, or would you like to have for a lunch break and have closed session after Committee of the Whole?
We're going to have to log on and log back off anyways,
yeah,
right?
So,
Your Worship, we have to do close before we go into Committee of the Whole because
Okay.
of the way the Zoom meetings are set up. So we can either
well,
break.
let's start closed now. Or do you want to break for lunch before we start closed? No? Okay, let's start closed now. Okay, so moved by Councillor Douglas, seconded by Councillor Hazelton. You know, the usual whereas. Whereas Section 239(2) of the Municipal Act 2001 as amended provides authority for the councils of municipalities to close the meeting or parts of a meeting to the public if the subject matters pertain to a matter identified in Section 239(2). And whereas the Council of Township of Georgian Bay deems it necessary to close this portion of the meeting in order to address matters under the following sections of 239(2), we have A, personal matters about identifiable individual, including municipal or local board employees, litigation or potential litigation, including matters before administrative tribunals affecting the municipality or local board. Read notice to muzzle an appeal. And B, which I wrote down somewhere, is planning personnel matters.
Yeah, personal matters about an identifiable individual, including municipal board or local board employees, read planning personnel.
Okay. Now be it resolved that Council Township of Georgian Bay moves into a closed session council at 12:06 p.m. All those in favor? All right, we are now going into closed.
Karen, we have a link for that.